Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. You're just in time to see me catch myself on fire, light and sage. So, train is off the track, but tonight it is a phantom train, and these shows are never fun, unless things go off the track a little bit. But I'll tell you what, guys. Hello, gatekeepers. Hello, Jose, Maraid, Ted. Welcome in. Welcome in. Lindsay, Caillou. Wonderful, wonderful to see you all. Susan, hello, 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 hello. Oh, gosh, this is great. I love to see y'all. It's been so long. Today has been a hell of a week, dudes. I'm telling you, I was scrambling for research and, Maraid, my beautiful mermaid. Hello, darling. I saw that fancy shirt you had on, my love. You look absolutely wonderful. It was just made for you. The Mermaid Squad. Glenn, welcome in. Hey, Blue, how you doing? AJK. Hello, hello, hello. Listen, little house cleaning before I bring on our lovely co-host. And PETA, welcome, welcome, welcome. If I hadn't seen you in a long time. And Edna, Froze, welcome, welcome. So here we are. This is it. I know you guys are so sick of hearing about Lincoln. You know what? I could do a whole nother month. And it's just been absolutely amazing. So Donnie and I have dug up some stuff for you tonight. This is the darker side of Lincoln's journey. There is so much stuff, guys. We're trying to fit it all into this episode because we promised you this would be the end. But let me bring Donnie in here. Welcome in, Donnie. He has done some amazing research. He's been digging. He did the same. He didn't do one I think he did like 2 books this time. Really digging in. Of course, going to Gettysburg helped. Did it not, Donnie? Welcome, welcome.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, Sue.
Hi, chat.
Hey, Sue Ashwell. Chris Jarvis. Hello. Sasha
Hey
Bell.
there,
Sasha
Uncommon
Bell.
Belief.
Uncommon.
AJK. Hello.
I always feel like romper room. I swear to God, I'm going to get. I broke a mirror. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's because I broke like 3 mirrors in one day. I don't know what that means. Does one cancel out the other? Is that 21 years? No, it's a lot more than that. That's a lot of 21 years of bad luck.
You broke 3 mirrors in one day?
One day. Well, I broke one twice. The same one twice. So is that 1 mirror or 3? Because it wasn't completely
I think that just
broken.
counts as 1.
And I picked it up and I dropped it again and broke it again. Like I said, this train is already off the tracks. Like, has anybody ever heard of a USB port going bad on a laptop to the point of I had a light, it was doing great, it's plugged into the laptop, and you need it or you can't see anything, right? So I go out and get another one. It wasn't working. Plug the new one in. It's not working. Plug them both into a different laptop. They both work. So somebody with tech experience explain that to me. Because this is the only thing that was different was the laptop and the port, right? Is there something I could have shut off or, could a spider got in there or something? Tell me what's up. I don't know. It's 17.5 years. What's 17.5
I don't know.
years?
I'm on
17.5. Oh, for the mirrors. For the mirrors, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I'm on a very cheap desktop computer right now. Something that I dug out of the closet.
Well, we're just going to light sage. We're going to banish all that bad broken mirror luck. But you know what? Superstition is what superstition is. I wonder how much of that actually came up out of actual, like Steve and I talk about what was the origin of, the myth or the lore, the superstition. Like black cats aren't bad luck. I think people just started thinking that black cats were like so sleek and, mysterious looking and beautiful that they figured they had to be evil and wicked and a familiar for witches and all this other stuff. They got a bad rap,
Speaking of familiars, we got Steve Stockton in the chat.
Oh, hey Steve, how you doing? Hello, darling. But, that kind of stuff. But everybody in Lincoln's world was pretty superstitious, and Donnie and I are going to tell not only superstition, premonitions, prophetic dreams. Steve, ears up. I think you and Lincoln have a little bit of parallel similarities there. Um, Also, I think he was a little psychic. I really do. I mean, I don't know if you would call prophetic dreaming is almost is in the same
It's a type of psychic
file
ability.
cabinet, right? Right. It's the
Yeah.
same file, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, it was is amazing. So there's that. There's ghosts. There's phantom trains. There's um, skeleton bands, and
And secret societies
oh my gosh, secret
and
societies
and
and
psychics and
murder,
mediums and fakers and real
conspiracy.
ones. Yeah.
Donnie, I don't know. Can we do it? Can we do it all in one night? Can we do it all in one night, like Santa Claus, or like I'm bringing out the sage, guys. I'm telling you, I'm not joking. There's like some Jumanji juju going on in my house today. Um, can we do it all in one night, like Santa Claus? Like
Well, there's only one way to
who else?
find out, right?
Who else does it all in one night? The spirits in A Christmas Carol. So how's everybody doing tonight? Look, Steve's smiling and waving. And Julie, welcome in, Julie Van
Hello,
D.
Julie.
If you guys
Hello,
not
Susan
been here
Woodcarver.
before, the yes, I love her. Um, if you guys have not been here before, if my mods could throw up the T Public / Cisco, there is a sale, 35% off. And Edna, I hope this podcast tonight finds you with stickers. Please tell me that you got your stickers. I sent them a couple of emails, but like I said, I don't have the order number, so they won't really talk to me about it. But I said I had some people that got stickers and they were taking a long time, and they said there was a little issue with, I don't know, I guess the sticky or something that they, everybody blames everything. They don't have the aluminum to make, the foil or the whatever the cans are, so they can't put the product in the cans because it's always something. But anyway, I hope you got them. We had some people ordering books, and I've been told by those authors that's fixed. And thank you so much for not only purchasing them but reaching out to me so I could reach out to them, probably at back door, to get all that fixed. Also, if you like the show, give it a thumbs up. If you want to just reach out a little further, put a comment under the video after it's posted. The live chat goes away for about 24 hours and it pops back up. And you can always put a comment under there that helps us get shared. Subscribe if you hadn't subscribed. Share it with a friend. We're at over 1,400, and we just love each and every one of you guys. And but I want to make sure everybody that might get something out of these gets a chance to see them, because like I said, I don't buy subscribers and things like that. I'm not saying everybody does. Some people do. And then some things just get so many hits for so many crazy things. But that's not why we do it. We do it so it's out there in the universe. Maybe somebody needs to hear something is in that episode, and the more chance, it gets to reach those people. So thank you guys so much for that. Um, and yeah, I think that sale, that 35
Hey,
off.
it's Michael Laciana. Hello.
Hey, Michael. Oh gosh. Hello, darling. He sent us some lovely pictures for the last week's episode. Welcome, welcome. He's going to be on, and I'm trying. If you could reach out, Mike, to Bill and James, I would love to have them come on for part of the episode, if not the whole thing. They're more than welcome, and talk about that night, talk about all the other stuff. Mike's got a wonderful show on to its journey through the past, and he is with Heritage Hunters, and you can find that on Amazon Prime TV. It's a different take on a paranormal show because it really dips into all the interesting history and the locals and the memories. And Steve, that's right up Steve's alley, and ours too, because we love history. And tonight we're doing some history, aren't we, Donnie?
Nothing but.
Let me ask you this, my friend. When you started digging on Lincoln, did you have
Hmm.
any idea? I mean, we're going back a month now. What, this is like the fifth episode on Lincoln, with
Yeah.
brought Caesar in there and everything else. This
Hmm.
has been one crazy ride. And now we're
Yeah.
ending in the darker side, which is all of the crazy stuff that's happened. Were you surprised at all the so many different?
Yeah, a lot of different stuff. Like I said, going into this, I didn't really have much knowledge about the Civil War or Lincoln or even that time period in American history. Because for me personally, like my love of history always stemmed from the more ancient stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, this was
Thanks, Mike.
an interesting first look, and man, I got a whole lot of Civil War knowledge now. Now I can have like a conversation with people
Oh, I
about
love it,
Civil
love it,
War,
love it.
whereas before I would just kind of like walk out of the room.
It's so neat to, I know we talk a lot about Gettysburg here, but that, Mike can back me up on this. There's something about Gettysburg. There's something about Gettysburg. And I'd go back tomorrow. I would go back tomorrow if I could, and I hope to go. I'd love to go around Christmas time. I know it's cold and everything else, but I would love to go out, stay at the Hoover one night or whatever. And maybe we can, do something, Mike. We can all meet out there again around Christmas. That'd
Or
be
maybe
my
we get some
Christmas
of the
gift to
people in
me.
this chat to come out and
Andrew,
meet us there.
hello. Yes, we could do that. I mean, if
Yeah,
somebody, is close by, I mean, it's southern Pennsylvania, wouldn't you say? Middle southern,
yeah. It's
you know,
actually it's
it's
closer to
almost right
me.
there.
Like I live closer to
Yeah.
Baltimore. It's only like an
Yeah.
hour, 20 minutes away from me.
Yeah. And it's very close to excuse me, Harper's Ferry and Antietam and Gettysburg, of course. And, because we're talking about Waynesboro, but you go into Gettysburg too. They do great Christmas stuff there. But, it's something to talk about in the future. But tonight, um, brief recap of everything we did. We went all the way back to Nancy Hanks, who died of milk poisoning. We you know pulled that one, forever, put that one to sleep as far as we're concerned, as what killed her. It wasn't a vampire. Sorry guys. Um, Unless the cow, we never looked into the cow. It could have been a different kind of cow or something, some kind of cryptid cow. I don't know, but milk poisoning. We established that Lincoln had a rough childhood, a simple childhood, self-taught, brought himself up, had a lot of death early in his life, a brother, his mom, of course, and then basically wound up in Springfield, Illinois, where he got his distaste for slavery, harkening back on his childhood as almost like an indentured servant to his father's, whims. So all of these character blocks, and of course, the rest of it is, famous story of how he goes through and becomes president, 16th president of the United States. The states were already having a hard time before he got there. Trust me, it didn't just start with him. And we talked about bloody Kansas and the Missouri Compromise and the carpet baggers and the free staters and the pro slavers and yeah, cow squatch. And he kind of fell into all of that, but you know what? He stood um, his ground, I think. Oh, Ted, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that super chat. How sweet of you. 10 pounds from across the pond. Thank you, Ted. Cheers to you too, love. Cheers to you. And I forget, I'm not very good at I'm terrible at English, can't you tell?
Yeah.
It's American
Or,
broken English.
was that 10 pounds? I think that's 10 pounds.
10 pounds. Thank you so much. That means so much to me. It's so neat to see, the reach that, our little podcast and our wonderful chat here, like I said, around the globe, we're just sending love. But tonight we're going to send shivers down your spine because I'm telling you, Andrew, it's so good to see you, honey. And so we were digging. We got all the way through to the assassination. We told you about the conspirators. We discussed the back and forth about, again, how I feel personally. My opinion is, one side or the other. There was heroes and villains on both sides. Of course, I wanted for the Union because, for the main part, is because I didn't want to be all broken apart in little pieces. I think there's strength in numbers, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. A Lincoln. So that's how I felt. And of course, you know how I feel about human beings being crappy to other human beings or animals or anything. So, of course, I'm against slavery. um, of any kind in any culture in any time, including now. So there's that. But he stepped up to the plate with humor, and if he didn't know something, he taught himself. He didn't, and he did all this under great adversity, I think, Donnie, in a lot of ways. And he didn't, you know, sink. He didn't like slump to it. I mean, as heavy as the weight that was on his back, he stood against many, many obstacles, including, God bless her heart, a batshit crazy wife, legitimately, all within her family, and of course, the death of, well, ultimately four of her sons, and her husband. But at the time of the White House, they had lost Eddie at age 4 in Springfield, Illinois. Then, of course, Willie at 11 drank bad water, got the old typhoid there, Donnie, and that was pretty bad. And then later on, after Lincoln's death, his son
Tad.
Tad would, yeah, name he called him that because he reminded him of a tadpole when he was younger. That's kind of cool. He died at 18 of just this horrible disease. He had to sit up across the bar so he wouldn't choke to death. Salvador. So, welcome in, sweetie. Just lots of death and things that of course could cause PTSD and everything else. I personally, not a psychologist, not a doctor, not a professional in any way, but I think she was bipolar. I think it ran in her family. I think she had some other stuff going on too. A little bit of that spendy kind of, hoarding kind of thing. And she had a little devious. She was a cheeky little monkey. You know what I mean? She had some devious plot and kind of things. I'm not saying she was part of the plot. That is a rumor that's out there. I didn't find anything to back that up really. I mean, even some of the claims of her buying a lot of morning stuff right before and pushing him to go to that play. And I mean, I'm not counting it out. I just didn't find anything that would and I didn't find any sauce on that, and the provenance is very messed up and all that, and it's not really, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not convinced of it. So I don't know. How about you, Donnie? Do
I'm
you
not
think she was
convinced of
part?
it either. She had
Yeah,
no reason to benefit from that.
right.
There was no motive nor motivation.
Yeah,
And
and by then,
judging on the events of her life afterwards, you can see that she didn't really benefit in any way.
oh gosh, no, she was so much worse off, And some of these little vids we're going to show you. One of them we're just going to. I'm going to have to do it a little different because I couldn't get my mic to record correctly to go on this laptop, and I had to go to another one. I didn't have time, but I can do it off the top of my head. I mean, I know this almost inside and out. I just might have stumble on names and stuff, so I have some notes, but the stories are there, the history is there, the witnesses are there, and it's just so well chronicled. But this poor man not only gets shot and killed in a theater, and then his body goes on this unbelievable journey, and it's phenomenal. But when we left you at the last, we were talking about the conspirators, of course, were hung, um, and buried at the fort, and Booth was on the run. Um, we brought up the fact of Mudd. Was he involved? Was he not? I think he was. I found a lot of uh, sources and things on that says he absolutely was. Um, I think a lot of the argument for that case is with Mudd is because his grandchildren spend almost 100 years trying to fight that and get his name cleared. But they're past now, and it's another generation, and we're kind of like into this whole, we can get to the facts, we can look up the documents, we can get to the archives, and we put it together. And Mudd was actually responsible for introducing um, John Surratt, Mary Surratt's son, from those Surratts, and Booth through the spy ring and stronghold in Montreal, Canada, where many spies and Confederate spies and those who funded them hung out. So Montreal, Canada was kind of a hub. It wasn't that far from Washington, D.C. It was It's the same train trip today as it was then, isn't it, Donnie?
I believe so.
I mean, in all honesty, unless
Hmm.
trains might be a little faster, but it's the same, you know. And I think personally, from what I've read, that Surratt was probably up there looking at Elmira, New York, at the prison to see if they could get those Confederate POWs out. Um, you know what I mean? Since Richmond had fallen and everything else, and that's why it was so easy for him to like jump the train and take the
Hmm.
skinny across the into Canada, and then he went on his little gauntlet out there to be a papal guard, and then eventually got found out there, turned in by somebody from his hometown who recognized him. What's the chances, right? And wound up in Egypt, and then got caught and extradited back and sat in jail. Did no time due to a hung jury and a little something called statute of limitations. So he kind of got away on that. The, the odd wheel keeps turning here, guys. You know, Prince Edward. What's going on, Kevin? Was Prince Edward involved in this too? Jesus. Lord, Jeebus help us. I got some new information on Prince Edward Island, Canada. I guess there was a huge battle here because the natives, the little people, a lot died on both sides. Oh, wow. We'll have to definitely look into that, man. Thank you for that. Keep us posted. Especially if a fight breaks out during the show or something, get video and
Yeah,
alert
I'd
us.
like to know more about that too as
Yeah, I
well.
would too. I
I
would
want to,
too.
yeah, if you got any information or links or articles, just let us
Yep.
know or let me know.
Mm, absolutely. Because I don't know much about that. I really don't. I mean, I know a little here, a little there, but that's with everything, right? So basically, it wasn't just Montreal. I can't tell you. I've heard scuttlebutt about the Catholic Church and all this. Look, more than likely, more than likely, it's kind of, like I said, it's like JFK. Every time I tell Donnie, it's like JFK. It's like all this stuff linking together. But the main thing is something that we dug up, and somebody in the chat mentioned a couple of episodes about it, and I was shaking my head because I was looking into it. I was researching into that area, and I was agreeing with you because I absolutely no doubt now to me. Um, but it's secret societies, and we have them now. We had them then. They've been in throughout all the history around the globe, I'm sure. But it seems a little more sinister when you get these little groups together and they're all conspiring behind, basically like the black hats. It's like an old cowboy movie where you've got the good guy that, and probably the great lady of the town is in love with, because that always adds that, that adds that thing. We all love him, but he has to do everything with his moral compass in hand. Hey, Ghost Dancer, welcome in. And that moral compass and trying to walk the straight and narrow and not do the underhanded and not the cheating and not the sleight of hand and all the evil deeds and all this stuff to win. They just keep that straight path. And it's infuriating to watch because you have all this really dastardly evil coming in and getting away with so much crap. And eventually, at least in the old cowboy movies, when and if the white hat cowboy on the white horse wins by doing it the right way, it's a great crescendo and everybody's happy. But in life, it could be very frustrating. I mean, just look at the Civil War. I was telling Donnie why we just didn't. They just didn't. They had dynamite and stuff that could have been over in an afternoon. But these people fought with a certain valor, and they didn't cheat, and there's good and bad on both sides, right? Well, if you've got a secret society with a lot of money behind it and a lot of planning, it's definitely an advantage. And we're going to tell you about one tonight, aren't we, Donnie? Here we go.
Well, up until now, we've these past few episodes with Lincoln and the Civil War, we've been alluding to the fact that there has been or there was a conspiracy involved with the assassination of Lincoln and the engineering of the post-war efforts.
Yes.
So we were kind of dancing around that, but now we're going to get into who Cisco and I both we both agree on, and we both believe that the real organization or the group or the minds that were behind all this is, I guess, Cisco, I'll let you introduce
All
them.
right. Well, I'll lead us into it. So, the founding of a secret society began even before Lincoln ever became president. A society so clandestine, so deeply secretive, that it almost disappeared from history. Almost. Their aim was to sponsor and conduct military expeditions into the Caribbean region to bring new slave states into the Union. Take a look at this. Ready, Donnie?
Yep.
A strong unionist, but he got a letter, which is in the Library of Congress, from his aunt, and it said, Joseph, your nephew John has just joined this group called the Knights of the Golden Circle, and she found out they took an oath to remove Lincoln and his cabinet. There were oaths that have been posted in Ohio that said, I will not rest or sleep until Abraham Lincoln, now president, shall be removed out of the presidential chair. The Knights that were captured in Berks County in 1863, one of the things that they said in newspaper articles is that they were hoping to participate in the abduction of Lincoln. Lincoln regarded such threats from these, they called them dark lantern societies, with good-natured contempt. He sort of took a fatalistic attitude about it. He said, if they're going to get me, they're going to get me. There's probably not much I can do about it. There was a pigeonhole in his desk that had 80 letters, 80 threat letters on his life, many of them undoubtedly coming from members of the Knights of the Golden Circle. One of the reasons that Lincoln refused to compromise in April of 1861 at the beginning of the Civil War, they were trying to work a compromise called the Crittenden Compromise proposed by a senator from Kentucky. But Lincoln said, if we compromise and we allow slavery anywhere south of the Missouri Compromise lines, it's only going to encourage groups, filibustering groups like the Knights of the Golden Circle, to try to take over Mexico, Cuba, and Central America. By 1864, the Knights were being subsumed by other secret societies, once called the Sons of Liberty, but they did become a bogeyman for the Republicans and were used very effectively in the election of 1864 that helped elect Lincoln. For example, before Robert E. Lee's troops came into Gettysburg, scam artists came into Adams County and sold the farmers insignias of the Knights of the Golden Circle and said, put these in your window, and then when Lee's army swoops through, they won't hurt your farm. And so they did that. They bought these and they put them in the windows. And Jubal Early, one of Lee's lieutenants, in his memoirs said, we came into Adams County and they were waving these things, and we had no idea what they were. So, but Joseph Holt wrote a report on the Knights. He really reported on the later secret society. As I mentioned, John Wilkes Booth was a Knight leader. He worked with the Knights in Memphis and other places. In his smuggling operations, he smuggled quinine. He was probably meeting, his sister Asia talked about a meeting with men in Philadelphia, strange men coming in the middle of the night in late 1864. They were probably Knights. They were whispering at all times of the Knights. There are a suspicious number of Knights that were involved in the Lincoln abduction. First, they tried to abduct Lincoln and take him to Richmond to exchange him for Confederate prisoners, and then that failed. when Richmond was evacuated and changed over into a booth in the assassination. But there were Knights who appeared to be involved in both plots. There was Booth, obviously. For example, the O'Loughlin brothers I mentioned, they were both Knights. They're documented Knights. Lincoln's stagehand Edmund Spangler, who held the door at Ford's Theater, is reputed to be a Knight. The costumer, the actor who was there doing suspicious things on the night of the assassination, named Lewis Carlin, was one of the gentlemen, the actors, who joined with Booth in the summer of 1859, joined the Knights of the Golden Circle. Robert Harris Archer, the colonel that I mentioned, who had the Knight certificate from Harford County, he was picked up in a rowboat in the Potomac River at the point when Booth and Harold were expected to cross. And the feeling was that he was trying to assist them in their escape. The Confederate spymaster from Washington, Cornelius Boyle, he was in charge of the Confederate camp under Lee at Orange Courthouse, Virginia, which is where Booth said he was going. And they were going to go to Mexico, and that's where Boyle went shortly thereafter. And there's actually, in the Lincoln assassination, a number, at least one suspicious letter from a secret society member to Boyle and the Surratts, basically saying that they're going to kill Lincoln Chase and others. I mean, the assassination plots were much broader than Lincoln and Seward. They were talking about a whole slew. They were trying to wipe out the top of the Union government. They were trying to kill Grant and Sherman. And so groups like the Knights of the Golden Circle, I was initially very skeptical. Now I'm becoming a believer, believing that they were involved. Washington papers, the day after the assassination, said that the Knights of the Golden Circle were behind it. Lincoln's special judge advocate general, who was brought in, a guy named Henry Burnett, to review the assassination evidence, he reports that I find the footprints of the Knights of the Golden Circle crossing my path in all directions. And this is a wood print from the Library of Congress. It shows, it came out later in 1865. It shows that the theory of assassination was Bickley, the practice was Booth, and the effect was the martyred president.
Donnie, my friend, can you see that?
Yeah, Albert Pike was from Massachusetts and the most powerful Freemason in America. He became a Confederate general.
Yep. Next one's coming up. Hang in there, guys. Listen to this shit.
Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, became the official text of Freemasonry, although it was filled with plagiarisms.
It gets even better.
Much material on magic was lifted from Eliphas Levi, a French Catholic initiate by English Rosicrucians. Sorry.
Say it 3 times. Here you go.
3 years into the Civil War, the Union War Department released an expose on the secret activities of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Mm-hmm.
I should be a narrator.
Yeah, you should.
The report identified Clement Vallandigham. Oh, okay, hold on. Maybe I shouldn't be a narrator. I spoke too soon. Vallandigham as the secret leader of the organization, which used many names.
Many names. Oh.
But it failed to mention Vallandigham's best friend was Edwin Stanton, head of the Union War Department.
Now, put that bee in your bonnet. What do you think about that?
Yeah, best friends with leader of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Yeah, I feel like
Lincoln. Like,
what?
That's the face of Lincoln's ghost when he's standing over Edwin Stanton's shoulder, looking down at the letter he's writing. being
Look it
like,
down.
"Oh, it was you, dude.
So
You're
there
the
you
one."
go, guys. Now I'm going to give you another little bit. I got to say my little spiel here. Just like with Lewis Powell, I don't agree what he did going in there, hitting the butler, pushing his way up the stairs, bashing in Seward's son's brains, basically. I don't even know what happened to that young man. You don't hear much about after, but imagine what he went through. Knocking over his sister, she slips in all the blood, um, about kills herself, and then he jumps on top of poor Seward when Seward's all morphined up, got a broken arm. You don't hear much about that, but he did, and a broken jaw. So he's in that metal brace, and Powell's just hacking at him. Finally gets jumped by a male nurse and get all tangled in the blankets. He runs out of mad, I'm mad, and spends 4 nights sleeping in the cemetery in a tree.
Mhm.
Now, folks, if that doesn't do it for you, understand that I have to say that guy showed up for work that day. This is war, and of course there's going to be groups like this, and I'm not condoning what they did, but we had them too. You see what I'm saying? In the beginning I said the black hats, white hats. It's infuriating to watch the white hats, and they're showing you everything he's doing. He's following that moral compass and trying to do good, but within that faction, in the Union side, there was plenty of people, guerrilla warfare, and people doing stuff. So I'm not pointing fingers at either side, north or south. But these guys here, um, I would venture to say that by many names, and just like what we were fighting in World War II, it's still around. It's still around.
Um,
I
can
live.
I
Go
can
ahead.
I explain a bit about like their background and what they were and what they represented?
Sure.
Um, so they actually started before the Civil War. I believe it was in 1854 when I think the founder's name was what was his name again? Binkley. Um,
Bigly,
yeah.
out of Ohio.
Um, the Knights of the Golden Circle actually started off as somewhat of like a political action group where basically their whole notion was that the southern states, before the whole Civil War broke out, and before while the controversies were still going on with like new additional states and which side should they be slave state or free state,
Right.
during that whole time, right around Bleeding Kansas and John Brown, that period, these
Hmm.
guys were running around, and their argument was that the southern states should go around conquering their neighbors, like Havana, like Cuba, Dominican Republic, the Caribbean islands, and parts of Mexico. That's why the word Golden Circle comes from. And the reason why they wanted to do that was so that they can add them into as slave states, and then that would give them more voting power in Congress and in elections. Because remember, the Congress was based off the population, so they felt like they didn't have enough population numbers to get their vote. So they need to add more territory to increase their population so they can have an equal voting power. That's
Hmm.
how it started
Hmm.
until the war broke out. And then once the war broke out, it became all about like decapitating the head of the
Right.
Union government.
Right. And Blue, I totally agree. I think you're right both times, because this is it. It's like talking about JFK, talking to Jim Mars, who studied it for,
Yeah, this is
30,
before
40 years.
Lincoln was even
Was
in
Yeah.
office. Yeah.
So the thing is he had 80 letters from just them, stating, and the thing is, um, everybody in his
Yeah,
cabinet was
I guess it
part of
was
this
kind of a
group.
gerrymandering thing.
Yeah,
That's how it started at least.
yeah, so many people in his cabinet were involved in this, and so many people in the union, there were union officers involved as well. Most of the southern, uh, uh, I would venture to say most. I mean, that's not being hyperbolic. There were part of this group. This was all
Mhm.
interwoven. It was in Baltimore. It was in Washington D.C. It was in the cabinet. It was in the White House, and
Also,
these are all documented through their own journals. The thing was, is it was so secret. So this guy, I just need to say this, Donnie, the guy
uh-huh.
that you heard the excerpt from, he does a wonderful, almost an hour and a half, I think, on YouTube. His name is David Keene, And he dug into this as well as many other people, but he really did the deep dive, and he wouldn't say this person was in it if he didn't have more than two or three confirmations from different sources on it. So there were people that were suspected to be, but weren't. And he didn't want to say it, but the ones he said were,
Hmm.
he was sure of. There was no doubt. There were people, I listened to witnesses that were little kids at the time and ran biscuits to these meetings that they called castles, and there's different levels, just like in the Masons, which I'm not 100% sure they don't bleed into each other there. But there was different levels, and Booth was actually sworn in there. They had all these secret rituals, just like, again, Masons and all the stuff you've heard. And with this one, I think they had to be blindfolded with their hands on a dead body while they, all this other stuff was going on to pledge. It changes over the years, but a lot of the traditions stay the same. Now, this group, suspiciously, uh, when I lived in Alabama, my father-in-law bought a little piece of land in a little place called Pulaski, Tennessee. And as I'm driving through, I'm noticing the names of these towns. We're getting more and more rural, and coming out of the city and getting more rural. And the first town we went through was named Killam, and the second one we went through was called Skinham, and then we wound up in Pulaski. And I'm getting real creepy vibes from this place. I don't know anything about it, nothing. Well, it turns out in that this group dissolved in the same place that another group was born in Pulaski, Tennessee, and that would be the KKK. So it was like one kind of went under and one came out. Now, during the Civil War, like Donnie said, before the Civil War, this all kind of came out of Bloody Kansas and Missouri Compromise and everything else. But again, they weren't playing by the rules for sure. You know, Jesse James and the Quantrill's Raiders, I thought it was something totally different, their own separate little thing. No, Jesse James was part of this. And all the gold they were burying all over the place, it was to, in case the South lost, they wanted to be able to fund another war, you know. And like I said about Powell, they they were finding a way to get through all this. Now, do I agree with their tactics and what they stood for? Hell no. But it was war. And again, I'm not making any excuses for them, but after doing all this research, it's just like Amityville. I have no doubt at this point that they were absolutely involved, and it was his cabinet. And Stanton, even though he did a lot of outwardly things to have people know, no way, Stanton was a good guy. You know, can you think through history? How about Aunt Edna? Andrew Jackson.
Can I make my point real quick?
Yep.
Um, the other thing you have to consider was that during the height of its, I guess, activity, the actual headquarters for the Knights of the Golden Circle were based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, I believe.
Yep.
Because Bickley moved there.
Yep.
A lot of people, when they look back on the Civil War time, they tend to believe that there was like this weird wall between the northern and southern
and it
states.
wasn't.
They tend to forget that a lot of the players in these stories, they were able to come and go to any state freely as long as they had the means. And
absolutely,
this wasn't like a war between two countries. So people, like a lot of these people would come up from like Kentucky, go into the Union side in Ohio, and then they would party over in Montreal. That's where they all hung out and partied, apparently, right? And then they were just all over the place. They weren't localized to the South, even though their philosophy was very much bring, by the end of it, if you look at their vision for America, what their goal for America is pretty similar to the ancient Roman Empire. They wanted to bring it back to a slave holding empire that conquered its neighbors.
There it is.
Right?
This is what I'm
That's
talking
what
about.
they're trying to bring back. And with the aristocracy in place, like in that video that Cisco you showed a couple weeks back about Gettysburg, when he was talking about why they were really fighting and the European powers were looking at the restoration of the old school aristocracy, that's what the Knights of the Golden Circle were trying to do. They were trying, if the Confederacy had won, they would have been the ones calling the shots, and they would have made it so that the aristocrat, where America was just a nation of an elite aristocratic class. And then there'll be like middle class, but then there'll be all these slaves from all the
Right.
neighboring surrounding
On
countries.
the backs of
So it's
another
like,
of another race of human beings,
so
which
they're just
again,
trying to
through
make it,
history.
they're trying to restore what the ancient Roman Empire, what I was talking about with Caesar. They were
Hmm.
trying to make America into that.
Hmm.
That was their goal.
Exactly.
That
And
was
right
their
here,
vision for this country. So if you study the Knights of the Golden Circle, you can see what America would look like had the Confederates won.
right. And they wanted to expand slavery into that big golden circle with the
They were talking about
Caribbean
going into South America.
and Mexico. Mexico was going to
Yeah.
be broke up, and then they were going to expand. Because not all the states were there now. We had California in the Civil War, but a lot of that middle western, all wide open, and they were fighting over it. So there you go. So again, off the backs of another race of human beings, and Aunt Edna was backing me up and saying what Stanton was doing was not unlike so many people we hear of. One of them I know is Andrew Jackson. Now, if I look at the guy, I love the fact that he beat the hell out of his would-be assassin with his cane and called him Old Hickory, and he was a real fighter and a real fisticuff kind of guy, and he was tough. Did a lot of decent things, but he also killed a lot of Native Americans. And what he would do was he adopted this little Cherokee boy and promenaded him around as a great philanthropist. Look what I'm doing. Yeah, but you failed to mention you killed his grandparents and his parents and made him an orphan, and that's when you adopted him.
So he was using a kid as a mascot. That's messed up.
Yes, so that's exactly it, and that's why most Native Americans will not carry a $20 bill. And you know what I mean? Thanks, Anna, for that. But yeah, I've actually turned them back at the bank. I don't do it anymore because I'm just too old and
Yeah.
tired. But
I'm all about the Benjamins, baby.
but the Andrew Jacksons were not too thrilled. So that's what I'm saying. What Stanton would do. When Lincoln died, he said now he belongs to the ages, and this is what we remember. And I've seen many historians and scholars who know much more than I do really
Hmm.
stand on Stanton's side. But this
Yeah.
man was surrounded by these guys. You could see they were dug in. They meant business.
Yeah.
They had a plan. They had all some of them were bold and even wore the badge on their lapel. They made no
Hmm.
bones about it. They were extremely secretive, but at the same time, there was enough out there. And
Hmm.
all the newspapers, like Mr. Keene said, of the time, said every which way I look, it points to the Knights of the Golden Circle. So
Do you know
again,
why I think the
if
Knights
you're
of the
out there, they still have a Facebook page. So if you're out there, I understand it was war. I
yeah.
don't I don't stand for what you stood for, but that's what the whole Civil War was about. There was people standing over here for their rights, and some would say other people's rights. And then we had this, other side that was trying to hold on to their tradition and what they thought was right. But again, when two sides are picking the future of entire race, I would like to, be on the side that's trying to lift them up instead of keep them down. And that's just plain and simple, you know.
Yeah.
But that's that. Now you're talking about all the
Um,
gold. I got a picture here. Go
Wait,
ahead,
can
Yanni.
I speak real?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just one of the reasons I believe what the Knights of the Golden Circle ultimately failed in their goals. After Lincoln was assassinated, and you had Edwin Stanton still in office and still in his position of power. Um, I believe one of the reasons why he had so much friction with the Johnson administration afterwards was because he was trying to enact or work from their influence, but Johnson was still very much trying to uphold a lot of Lincoln's political policies and ideals. And where they clashed, that's why Stanton tried to get Johnson impeached, and Johnson tried to get Stanton fired and try to drag him from his office
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
Stanton was still trying to
Yeah.
do that. But the problem was their goal was not just to assassinate Lincoln. Their goal was to install their own
Hmm.
president or their own government. And
Hmm.
that part of their goal, they failed in.
Hmm. Hmm. And
So,
to tell you the truth, if their goal um, was to save the South, what they actually did by killing Lincoln is they did not get the money. The money they were going. Lincoln was ready and had a letter in his desk. He was going to give $400 million in that time, to the
yeah.
South to rebuild. He wanted to send people in there to
And Edwin
rebuild, help
Stanton
the
was like,
people.
nope.
and you didn't
Yeah.
get it. You didn't get it. And
Yeah.
they made money off of the suffering, just like in every war. And they were making money on both sides of it. So the South actually
Hey,
cut their own
Bigfoot and
throats
all.
when it came to that because they didn't get that help up where, all right, it's over. We're all Americans. We're all a part of this. We're all neighbors. Help your brother up. And all of those
Yeah.
plans that were in place, all hours he spent with Johnson, just before he died, he had a feeling. We're going to get into those too. But he had a feeling and he wanted to tell him his whole restoration idea. And South got none of that. They were trolled on for years afterward and trudged down and lifted only by the spirit of the Southern people to uphold their traditions and rebuild that part of the country. And I've lived in it half my life, and I love it just as tell you the truth. If the truth be told, I like the
In
South a
in
lot.
some ways, the South bounced back uh,
Yeah, yeah.
remarkably well.
But
In
that's
some
what they
ways.
did. They
Yeah.
they they really postponed it, and So as far as all that gold, um, there's gold everywhere, and you can talk to treasure hunters that have looked for Jesse James's gold, and you hear all about it. But now maybe when you hear it, you'll understand where that gold was going and for what reason. It wasn't a small tight group; it was a much larger, banded, organized, secret society that it was happening. But these young men here, 1932. This is Theodore uh, jo- uh, Joselle and and Henry Grubb. I'm laughing because the Grob, Grubb, but they were both poor kids, and they were in a tenement house in Baltimore, and they were both of fatherless families. They both lost their dads, and their moms were real hardworking. And these guys started a little club where they were, treasure hunting and stuff. Well, not treasure hunting, but they were burying what they thought was treasure. They had like a little pirate group going on, just a little, club for poor kids that find something to do during the day, that kind of thing. And they started digging in the cellar to bury what they wanted to bury, and they wound up unburying some real treasure. They pulled up gold coins out of almost rotted tins that had been buried there. Now they pulled up as much as it was $11,200 in gold coins of various dates dating back to the time of the Civil War. And that was
And what year did this
over
take place?
1932, and that
Eleven
was over
thousand dollars in 1932 money.
$10 million today.
Oh
That's what
damn.
it would be. But the sad part is there was many legal battles with the people that owned the property that they were renting from, and also there was a ban on gold at that point in time that was still in effect. So if they tried to put it in the bank, they probably would have been arrested. There's a time in America where during the war where all gold was supposed to be turned in, so they went to the police. Why, I don't know. And then
Those kids are
all of
dumb.
the legal ball started rolling. Basically, what it
So
turned
dumb.
out to be, everybody fighting for it, and they won a part of it, and it was put in a trust for them, and virtually neither one saw a dime because they didn't make it to the age to be able to get the trust. So it was a
They
very
shouldn't have
sad
told
story.
anyone.
Yep, they should have just took it
Man,
one
I
piece
would
at
have
a
been if I
time.
was the third group guy in that group. I've been like, "What the hell are you guys doing? No, you don't go to the freaking bank,
Hmm.
man." I would
Yeah,
have just been
yeah,
bopping them on
pretty
the heads,
rough.
like, "What are you guys doing?"
Well, they never saw a damn dime of it, Donnie. Ain't that
Yo,
sad as shit? Ain't that sad?
naivete that cost them in the end.
Right. But many people have found gold, and if that's something that interests you, look into all the different treasury laws and everything. I know you saw them,
Yeah,
Donnie. We were out there in Gettysburg. No relic hunting. You can't go out there and if you dig anything up. First of all, if you take something out of that place, the only reason I have this cross, it was out almost in the street. If it had been, you know, and the way it all happened, it wasn't something I paid. I wouldn't take a rock from there, but
yeah,
digging up stuff. And I feel the same way about arrowheads and things like that. So, but isn't that something? So there you go. And to me, there's very little doubt um, on it. Again, like in the JFK thing
see,
or any of these
and
conspiracy
knows.
facts, when you focus on one thing, you tend to get caught up. When you back up and look at the 40,000 foot view, there's no doubt about this.
Hmm.
There's so many journals and so many documentaries and so much, documents that have come up and letters. And the thing that gets me from it all, instead of sticking into that, look at the fact that what Keene said when he got these death threats, he put them all in this little, they call it a pigeonhole cubby in his desk. And he kept them all there, and he looked at it like, well, he wasn't big in believing to have all these guards and everything else. And he had to get to the people, and he had to be able to answer letters and be out in public and speak in public. And he was just going to do it.
Oh,
And
Cisco.
that's huge to me. That's huge
To add
to me.
to add to your point,
Yeah.
I found an example of one of the letters,
Go ahead.
the death threats in this
Mhm.
book, and
Okay.
I would like to read it to you to give you a
Absolutely.
sense of what it sounded like. Right? It's not
Please
long,
do.
guys. Don't worry.
And can you imagine, though, getting these day after day after day? That's the
Okay.
kind of man Lincoln was.
I'm going to read an actual letter that Lincoln received verbatim. Okay. Goddamn your goddamn old hellfired goddamn soul to hell. Goddamn you and goddamn your goddamn families. Goddamn hellfired goddamn soul to hell. To old Abe Lincoln. That's
Wow.
exactly how it read. And this is the kind of shit he'd be
Profound.
receiving in his mailbox like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time.
That's basically a letter, a curse letter.
Yeah.
It's just, but I can
Jesus,
tell you,
when I read that, I was like, what the hell must have...
I don't think it took, because Lincoln hasn't really rested, not his body and not his spirit, and we're about to get into that stuff right now. And I believe
Lincoln
there
was the
more
most
to it.
stressed out man in the universe.
But the thing is he kept going. He
Yeah.
would not let it stop him. He continued on for the, you know what I mean? And that, if nothing else, that should, give him a nod, because can you pick somebody today that would do that? That would go up and
Nope.
against all odds and get absolutely just pummeled with threats, and he got shot through the hat. And this man would not stop going to help the soldiers that were hurt at the old soldiers' home. He did it multiple times within a week, and that's when they were going to kidnap him. And that was the plan. And we'll get a little bit more into that next. Dottie, do you have anything else on that?
Yeah, look at what Blue Crossroads wrote. He says, "Don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel." You're talking about that letter.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he could have been talking to me too.
Yeah.
He could have been talking to me too. This shit pisses me off. I swear to God, this is one of the nicest men. And this guy Lincoln didn't have a great reputation with the natives, but you also got to think what was going on, what built his character. This is a man who his childhood really put the foundation on him. Hey, Fast. And how you doing, sweetie?
Cisco, it's 9 o'clock.
Go ahead.
It's done.
Go ahead. I'm going to play this other video too, so go ahead.
I'll be on the phone.
Okay. This was a man who shaped by his past, and really quickly, I'll remind you that even though he didn't have a great, a rapport with his father would tell him the stories of how him and his other two brothers. One of them was named Malachi, I think, and this is Thomas, Lincoln's father. His father, gone in the war, fighting, in the, the wars out there in the militia. He was a colonel, also named Abraham Lincoln. That's who Abe is named after. Supposedly came over with Lewis and, Clark's, had something to do with that. And was a really good soldier. When he finally got to get back on the farm with his family and spend time with his young boys, he was attacked by a roving an Indian raid, and Abraham Lincoln's father saw Abraham Lincoln's grandfather, Abe Lincoln, get his throat cut and scalped in front of him. His body fell on Thomas, all the blood from his own father all over him. And right before the native was about to kill Thomas, Malachi shot him with a long rifle, or he would be dead and Lincoln wouldn't be here. So he lived with that all his life. So it's very hard to imagine growing up that way and understand that people tend to put everybody in a group. So if you're Native American, You all must be this. You all must be that. If you're white, you all must be this. If you're black, you all must be this. If you're Asian, you all must be this. You know, and we just got to get out of that. Even then, they were trying to divide and conquer us. You know, you have to take people one at a time. You never know. It's good and bad in everybody. You know, we had a lot of good guys in uniform and a lot of, bad guys on both sides. You know, somehow we've all muddled through, but for some reason, we're still having the same arguments. You got to take people one at a time, you know, unless it's obvious, everybody in that gang, you know, you know what I'm saying. But I can still say he was an honorable man. And from what I've read of him writing, that's how he thought too. And he dealt with all this. So it's absolutely worth mentioning. Now, um, this is a part that if that didn't blow your mind, Abe Lincoln, I found, out much digging, was always a prophetic dreamer. He would have dreams, he would talk about, or others who knew him would talk about from way back. I don't know all the things that he might have said about the people he knew in town, or maybe gave premonitions, or a future warning or something. A lot of those have been lost to time, but there's whispers about it. But this one survived. Now, around the age of 6, he dreamed of speaking to a large crowd, and he could not understand it. It bothered him so. But he said everybody, he could look at the faces, and they were all looking at him to say the right thing. And he was just able to do it, and it scared him so much because he couldn't imagine being an adult male, and it was him, and it bothered him so much that he talked to his stepmother Sarah about it, and she said, I think you've had a premonition that one day you will be a great man speaking to a large crowd. It's a perfectly good dream. And she explained it to him. Well, that one came true, and obviously, as we know, and it didn't quite work out for him the first time that he was speaking, but he did have, when he was on that stage, have that deja vu kind of feeling. And while he was looking out over the crowd, he saw one of his friends getting in a push shove, and the guy was about to hit him. And Lincoln jumped off stage, jumped in the fight, whooped the guy's butt, and then got back on stage and finished his speech. That's the kind of guy Lincoln was. I kind of like that. That was kind of cool. Now, he didn't win the Senate race at that point in time. I'd have voted for him, but but that was kind of cool. But that wasn't the only one that his stepmother Sarah and he shared. When he did go back and visit her back in Springfield, she told him when he left, "This will be the last time I see you." He said, "You're going to do important things, but somebody's not going to let you finish." And she gave him a hug, and she gave him one last look, and she told him how proud she was of him. And that was the last time she saw him. He was taken, of course, by John Wilkes Booth. But again, I think there was a little bit more to that, as Donnie and I explained.
There was another account from a guard. I forgot his name. He was
Mhm.
like one of his the attendants at the White House who like basically was the guard there that he would say
Mhm.
hi and bye to every
Mhm.
day whenever Lincoln would walk by.
Oh yeah,
And
okay.
then the morning of the on the day of the assassination, he recounts in his memoirs. Apparently, everyone wrote memoirs back then. By the way,
They did.
um, he recounted in his memoirs that on that particular morning, he distinctly remembered that the way Lincoln said goodbye
Right
to
there.
him,
Hmm.
it was like it.
Yeah,
He felt like it was a final goodbye,
yeah, yeah.
and
All
he
of these
remembered
things.
feeling that. And then later that day, he finds out that Lincoln gets shot, and he was just like the regular guard there.
Right, right. I mean, that's just, it just seemed to follow Lincoln. And a lot of people took it for the melancholia that he obviously suffered. It was also in his mother, and the depression and things like that. But he just spoke things matter of factly, like things like, this war is eating me from the inside out. I fear I will not live to see the end of it, you know. But it was deeper than that. It was so much deeper. Um, and this one, uh, that really threw him. He got up and he was dressing in the mirror, and he's looking at his face, and it's normal 1 second, and the next it seemed to almost split in half. And not, I don't mean split in half, but like a fence running down the left side and the right side, right down the middle. And one side was normal, and the other side was pale, and the skin was wrinkled and taunt and grayish. And he said it was almost skeletal, and it scared him so bad, but he could not move, and it just held him there. And he was so overwhelmed, and Donnie will bring more of this later, that at that point in time, Mary had been seeking advice from through seances and mediums and spiritualism that was so big at the time, and he didn't mind her doing that because it seemed to calm her after the death of Willie, and gave her some, like, almost like a meditation and a calming. And at this point, he sees this in his own mirror, and he wants to know what it means because it was so profound and so vivid that he goes and sits in on one of these seances too. And before he got there, the medium told him the reason for the two faces. My spirits told me that you will serve 2 terms, but you will not live to finish the second one out. So this is the second or third time he's been told this by people that didn't know. And that's when he started sitting in on these seances and stuff. But that one where he saw the two faces, it blew his mind. He looked in the mirror and saw his face almost in 2 parts. One half was normal, the other pale and strained, almost skeletal. And Mary remarked through her medium, her friend, that about the 2 terms. And again, like I said, that one came true. And it would not be the only occurrence in that White House since Lincoln's death. And I can tell you right now that the ghost of Lincoln is probably one of the not just most famous, but most frequently seen in so many different places. And when I first heard that, going through all this, all these years, you hear little pieces here and there, and you hear about the train, you hear about this and that, and you don't really put them all together. But when you do something like this, and the sheer tonnage of evidence and witness statements and different people throughout all of these decades, 159 years, is absolutely astonishing. So we've got some interesting things to bring up too. But I made this little video. We can, kind of talk through. There's a couple spots in there I want to that kind of spot me for certain stories, but it's pretty neat. Donnie, you with us now? Donnie popped
Yeah, I'm
out.
here. Sorry, my internet crapped out.
That's okay.
Are we talking about like Lincoln prediction stories? Because I found quite a few.
It's coming. It's coming. This is all just catching us up. It's got a little booth. It's got a little bit of the train. It's got about the different cities it went through, and I'm going to tell a little bit through there. And then we've got you coming after this.
Can I just add something to the story that you just told?
Yes.
Where with Lincoln seeing the 2 parts of his reflection.
Yes.
In the way I read it in the book, what happened was he actually sat down on like a recliner, and so he was looking at the mirror from a distance, and then he saw the 2 faces, and then he got up like kind of shook, like what the heck?
Yeah.
So then he walks over to the mirror and checks it, and he sees that's nothing wrong. So he's like, oh, maybe my eyes are tired or whatever. Goes to sit back down, sees it again, right?
It's pretty profound, yeah.
But the thing is, the next day he goes to Mary Todd and he tells her about what happens because he doesn't know how to interpret it, because he feels like he saw something, but he didn't know how to interpret it. And then when he had a conversation with Mary Todd about it, she was the one that suggested that maybe it means that he's going to win the re-election, but then maybe he's not going to survive his second term.
Right. And it was definitely backed up by that Lola lady, though, the medium. When he first sees her, that's what she tells him. And Mary hadn't had a time to tell her about it, which kind of made it for me, because she knew about it before Mary, you know what I mean? It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. And this is a little bit what it looked like. Thanks, Lindsay. We learned a lot digging, I'm telling you. After tonight, closing the door on this one. I keep saying that, but man, there's so much to Lincoln and the whole thing. It's crazy. And the chat, absolutely. All right, here we go. This is the room that Lincoln took his last breath. 58 people went through here that night. But one doctor stayed, Dr. Leal, and held his hand through every dark hour through this evening. And he said he did it because if Lincoln was conscious at all, he wanted to know that somebody was there that cared for him. This is a last picture taken of the bed Lincoln laid in. Mary was not there. Stanton had her removed hours before the death. She wasn't there to see her husband's last. When news got back to Springfield, Illinois, the people mourned by decorating every building and almost every window with black mourning cloth. The nation was absolutely devastated. As the days went on, slowly but surely, first the cities and then the towns. Meanwhile, Booth was still on the loose. This is Garrett's farm. This is where Booth would find his end, in Garrett's tobacco barn. Booth actually wanted to come out and duel with the Union officers, but the one leading said, no, we won't be doing that. And Corbett was the one who took the pot shot him in the neck, and basically he was paralyzed at that point. They laid him on the porch, and Booth asked to see his hands, and the last words he said were useless, useless, and he was gone. He was taken to the Montauk, where the conspirators had been held before their trial. And Stanton put out the story that he had been buried at sea, but he wasn't. He was buried at the same fort that the conspirators were hung in, and then his body was moved again. And decades later, was turned over to his family, where he is buried here, if you believe that story. Personally, if he was in that group, who's to say? Now, Lincoln would have many prophetic dreams while he was in the White House. He had one where he was in a small rowboat in a rough sea headed towards a dark horizon, and he would always wake up screaming. And he had this dream almost exactly the same time as the first shot was sent into Fort Sumter, and he had woke that morning to find out the Civil War had started. He had that dream several other times, always before a major battle. Bull Run, Antietam, Gettysburg. Each night before, he had this dream. And he had it again the night before, April 13th, the night before he went to Ford's Theater and was shot. Now this one, he wakes up and there's wailing at the White House, echoing throughout the building. He cannot find where the wailing and crying and screaming is coming from. The sobbing is overwhelming. He walks through a door in his dream, and he sees a casket laid out with candles and one guard. And he walks up to the guard and he says, who is dead in the White House? And the guard said, the president. He has been shot by an assassin. 10 days later, the dream comes true. The coffin was very ornate, and it was set with silver studs, sterling silver studs. And this picture here was the last picture ever taken of President Lincoln. It was part of a photograph that was allowed to be taken in Chicago by a photographer. And it was lost until 1957 when a 14-year-old Lincoln enthusiast dug it up. Now, Lincoln was supposed to inspect his new train car. He didn't like the fuss. He didn't really want to spend the money. But that morning, before Ford's Theater on April 14th, he was supposed to inspect this train car. And he got there, and it was almost complete. He never got to ride it alive. They set his body here in his coffin, and that body would set off on a ride like nobody has ever heard of before. All the towns, no matter how small they were, got together, heard from the White House slowly but surely that the president was dead, and again gathered and tried to make funeral plans. They were going to put his body on that train and take it across America so everyone could say goodbye. And that's what they did. Again, in every town, they would just gather, dressed in mourning clothes, and hope that the train would come through there. They could not bring it through states that they thought was going to be a problem. But here you're looking at a picture of his old office in Springfield, Illinois, where he had the partner, Herndon, who wrote the biography, first biography on Lincoln. And he is now with the Angels. This is his house his only house he really owned with Mary. He had, Eddie was born here. 3 of his sons were born here. And of course, they draped it in black mourning cloth, and the crowd started to gather. And every day, they would just put more and more black draping and more wreaths. And of course, then the buyers started. They realized that the vendors, they realized that they could make money on this. So they started taking all the pictures that they could and turning them into something very new. And it's called a postcard. Oops, stopped it. It's called a postcard. The small ones were 10 cents, and the large was 25, and that was quite the deal back then. And you can get that mounted. And it was pictures of their parlor, and that is a horsehair couch that's still there today. This is a bed that Mary and Lincoln slept in, and this is his horse, old Bob. Even he got dressed up. And again, all of the souvenirs and everything that wasn't nailed down was sold as a souvenir to add to the mourning. People just didn't know what to do. This was one of the most elaborate funerals and funeral processions ever done. So the department got together and decided they were going to put this train on a 1,645-mile journey through 400 towns and cities. And in many of those cities, they would take his body off the train and set it up in their hall and people would come by the thousands. In Chicago, there was 7,000 per hour that would walk by just to give their last respect. Now, on this train, they took an embalmer along, and they were the only two, and his assistant were the only two people in that train. And it was their job was getting a little harder as the train went through. Oh, one of the honor guard. Oh, cool. So these are just some pictures, guys. I thought I would share a little bit of that. Yeah, it is, Aunt Edna. What do you do with it, right? Even if you know exactly, I mean, who can you tell who's going to listen? Yep. Yep. That's right, Ted. But there was also a very solemn, there's the embalmers that rode with. They even set it up on a lifted platform. And at night they had the lanterns glowing. So when they went through these towns on the way to the next city, people would gather. They would come from miles and miles and miles just to pay their respects to the train as it passed by. Many children said this is the first time they ever saw their parents cry. Farmers and businessmen, politicians and dignitaries that did not get along with Lincoln while he was alive came to pay their respects in every city that it stopped in. It was quite the thing. And I wonder if that emotion of all those people gathering, not the politicians, not the people making the money, not the the vendors and the snake oil salesmen that were trying to make a buck, but the people who really cared with deep emotion. I'm wondering if this didn't play a huge part in the fact that so many have still seen this phantom train go by. Now, in just about every city or in between, people have said that they've seen this train. They say that they hear the whistle blow and look up, and a faint specter of this train. They can hear it. They can see the train itself. They know it's the Lincoln train by the ornate decorations, and some have even mentioned that they saw the picture on the front of Lincoln. This is them actually having to move the train cart on a ferry to get to the across. It's crazy, the stuff they did. Look at all these people. This is the picture that the 14-year-old found, and this is the last picture, as I said, of Lincoln. But I think that emotional charge, I've often wondered how an inanimate object could be a ghost or an imprint in time. But if it is emotion and energy that does that, I can almost understand now. Yeah, like a residual energy, Andrea, really. This is actually Roosevelt, when he was 6 years old, watched the procession go by, Teddy Roosevelt, and his little brother Elliot, and he actually watched it go by. And then later on became president himself. But just one of the things. Now, in a lot of the cities, they would not let the blacks walk with the whites. And believe it or not, Stanton was the one who reached out and said that that would not be allowed. And, with Stanton's character and everything else, I think that was one of those gestures. But needless to say, it still had the effect. Of course, a nation could mourn together in this. In some cities, it caused fights, but it didn't stop the people from gathering. Look at all these people. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Of course, each city had its own ceremony and, huge things, structures being built for just this. And it's just, wow. It's just incredible. I don't know who did who sold the black crepe, but they made out on this. Look at all that horses and just incredible. But anyway, the Phantom Train. I want to tell you about that. Now there are countless stories, like I said, throughout each town and city and passed down. But there are some that have been written down and journaled. The mixtures of them seem to be, some of them actually see a band on the back of uh, like skeletons playing music and stuff. Those are the ones I think that are made up or exaggerated. I just can't see a purpose for that. Plus, I don't think there was a band on the train itself. And I think that was just something that was added in. But the one that seems to go from, no matter what town it's in, as the train goes by, if you see the Phantom Train and you hear the two whistles, clocks seem to stop, watches seem to stop. And that has a little bit of extra meaning to me because of that energy and everything else. So it just really, that one gets to me a little bit. But it just seems that, as I said, the emotion of all these people making this, just traveling to see the train together and talking about it with the families and making that, look at this, just gathering, standing up, men taking off their hats as the train goes by, their last uh, salute, their last effort. Yeah. Farmers would stop plowing and take off their hats until the train was fully gone by. And I believe that all of this emotion together, this human emotion and this grand spectacle, if you could say, of mourning, really made an imprint on time. Donnie, do you have anything to say about that? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think all those people focused with their emotions and their psychic energy on this one event, and they're all
Uh-huh.
gathered there doing the same thing. I believe that created a tulpa, and
It
which
could
which
be.
exists through time. Which is kind of along the lines of what you're saying. Like, their energy is what gave this power.
It has to be because Steve and I have talked about it a lot too. Um, and I couldn't understand how, like ghost ships and things like that. We often talk about these things. Of course, these are only guesses and theories because we'll never really know. But the stories that survive about this, um, it's just amazing. I had no idea how many there was. I thought there was two or three where somebody said they saw the ghost train. It's hundreds, hundreds over decades. It's like
I can believe that.
159 years of this. Yeah. And they all don't seem like they're stemmed off the same thing, you know. But that is an amazing spectacle of a train. See the large picture of him on the front? That stayed on all the way through. They really put everything they could into this. And again, I don't think Lincoln would have liked this at all, but I think he would have been touched by the emotion. For somebody that had to come up through so much hate and fight through that
Hmm.
battle, it almost seems, I don't know what the word is, Donnie.
I think the other thing is, unlike ships, this train was going along land where you had like thousands of people lined up along the tracks in
Hmm.
every town. And even like between the towns, they said there were like thousands of people just lined up along the tracks all the way down to the destination.
Right?
So that's a lot of like people focusing on one centralized route.
Yep. Yep.
So I can definitely see the ghost train being, something that manifested from that time.
Hmm. Hmm. I think it really did. I mean, even the train sounds eerie. It almost sounds ghostly, doesn't it? So can you imagine? Uh, you just minding your own business. All of a sudden, this ghost train, you know, and then you look to see what time it was, and your watch stopped.
Yeah.
Now, here's one of the most popular stories. I'll tell you right over this. One of the most popular stories is that of Abraham Lincoln's ghost train, of course. Rumor has it that the ghost train still travels through the countryside the same time each year with the president's casket aboard. It has been rumored that clocks and watches stop whenever the train passes by. Yep. I had another one that was a witness. Let me find that. Sorry, guys. I took so many notes.
Um, Cisco, do you believe that that train is contains like the spirit or the soul of Abraham Lincoln, or do you think that train is the creation of like all these people?
I couldn't tell you. I don't think it has contains the soul. I think this is what I think. I think that when people see it and people think of him in some way, he at that moment he may be connected to it,
Hmm.
but just like any of us. But I don't think Lincoln's ghost is stuck in any one place, because
No,
the thing about this is Lincoln's ghost is seen all around Washington D.C. Very rarely has he been seen in the Springfield house in Illinois. He has been seen in the Capitol. He is seen in the Lincoln bedroom by many different people. Um, and it's not even a Lincoln bedroom. That was where Lincoln's office was. He never slept there. But he's been seen in Ford's Theater. Now, in Ford's Theater, they closed it down for about 100 years. It was office buildings. They didn't want to keep it a theater. And they opened it back up somewhere. Some dignitary decided that was long enough, and they made it a theater again. And from that point on, there was no hauntings while it was an office building. Zero. Nobody ever claimed to see a thing. As soon as it was a theater again, that's when workers said that during a play, even though the balcony where Lincoln sat was closed, they would see a glowing light there. There's hundreds of these accounts, hundreds. If you go up there, the light is gone by the time that they get up there. So that was a trip. And this is another picture. We're going to talk about that a little bit coming up here. Every time I looked at it, I thought it was fake. I kind of feel a little differently now. I can't say it isn't. But what I can say is Lincoln's ghost is the number one most popular but most frequently seen ghost. Not only, like I said, in the Capitol building, in Washington, D.C., in other places you wouldn't imagine. One of them is the Hawthorns that went to the play with the Lincolns that night. The one that was stabbed in the arm. And again, I said most of the blood that people are selling, samples, or that you can, get as a
I think it
collector.
was Rathbone were
Yes,
their names.
Rathbone and
Yeah,
Claire.
Major Rathbone.
Right.
That was the other couple that was sitting with them in the booth
Mm-hmm.
when Lincoln got shot.
Mm-hmm.
So Major Rathbone was basically like this last minute. His wife, I forgot the wife's name. His
Claire.
wife was actually friends with Mary Todd. That's why they were there with them that night. But the guy
Right.
was just a major. And they were like
Right.
first cousins who got married, but Cisco will, yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, they did.
yeah.
I thought it was his half sister. It's half
Or
sister.
stepsister?
Stepsister, well, not
Maybe.
half sister, stepsister,
I think
stepsister.
stepsister.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because parents
yeah,
and then
stepsister.
stepsister.
Yeah.
But anyway, they wound up getting married. Claire, much like Laura Keene, kept the dress that had the blood on it. Now, the blood on her dress, everybody would say it was Lincoln's blood, but again, it was probably her future husband's, because he was the one that they hit an artery and he was bleeding everywhere. I believe that Lincoln's blood was probably on the rug below, because even the doctors, there was many doctors in the audience that jumped up there. Leal was one of them, stayed with Lincoln all night long. Very
Check out
little
what,
blood coming from his head wound, but the
check out
blood
what
on the walls. Go ahead.
check out what Steve wrote.
Yeah. Yep. How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? That's it. That's it.
Such a
But
rascal.
yeah, it's a famous thing. I said it myself, but I say it differently now when I think about this stuff, right? But so she's got the blood on her dress. Now they get married, wind up having 2 kids, and they never quite get over this. Nobody does that was there. It really affected everybody. I mean, PTSD. Rathbone can never forgive himself for not stopping Booth. He's got very severe PTSD to the point of, it's always coming up. There's never anything settled, right? So one night he just snaps. He gets a knife and a derringer, and he's basically acting out what Booth did that night. He's going toward the kids' room. Claire stops him and somehow gets him away from the children and into the bedroom and shuts the door. And he winds up shooting and killing her. And then he cuts himself in several major arteries, winds up living through that, and spends the next 27 years in an insane asylum. So, again, this effect. But before that, Claire kept the dress and she kept it hanging in this like extra walk-in kind of closet, kept this dress just displayed to show people, and just she didn't want to get it clean and she didn't want to get rid of it. And on the anniversary of Lincoln's death, she wakes up and sees Lincoln sitting in a chair that has been moved from her bedroom to kind of look toward the closet. He's sitting in the chair like he's looking through the closet door and just laughing and kicking his big old long legs up and just really having a good old belly laugh like he's watching a play. She screams and has a fit, runs downstairs, goes to her, I guess they slept in different rooms, goes to her husband's room, tell him what happened. He goes in there, everybody tells her it's just a dream, right? Well, that was that. She wasn't having it. She says, I know what I saw. Well, they had a guest she wouldn't sleep in that room anymore, but she kept the dress in the closet. The guest sleeps in the room, sees the same doggone thing, and he never had been told about it. And right to the letter, every detail. So Claire goes and leaves the dress in the closet and has the closet bricked up and sealed. But that didn't do any good because people continued to see that exact same thing. The chair would move, he'd look at the closet, and he'd, wake people up, or people would hear laughing and go in there and see him looking at that dress and laughing. I don't know why in the world that would happen. I can't imagine why a ghost would do that, but it doesn't seem residual to me. He was never in that house, and I don't believe it was his blood on that dress. What do you think, Donnie? Another like Tulpa thing? Were they thinking about it so much that they conjured up a memory, kind of a Tulpa thing, because they couldn't move past that what had happened?
Yeah, because it's more like a replay of an event, right? Like
right, yeah, kind
it's
of.
not like it's like more of like a residual haunting rather than like a conscious entity like making actual decisions and
Yeah, I
being
mean
aware.
that's kind of what it seems like to me too, because
I don't know if it was because they were there or the power
right.
of, or
Well, the
because
dress
of the
was
blood,
there,
or the dress was there.
but I don't think it was his blood, dude.
Maybe it was a combination of both.
Right. I just, I mean, that's kind of, think about it, guys. Everybody in the chat, I mean, if everybody would just say off the top of their head, well, it's got Lincoln's blood on it, he would be drawn to that. I don't know that he would follow every piece of cloth or whatever. You know what I mean? It's hard to just spitball in here, But if it's not even his blood, but the dress was there, and their memories were there, and they were kind of locked in that moment. And I honestly think it says more about that couple than it says about Lincoln. Do you see where I'm coming from here?
Yeah.
There's a lot of these stories where you kind of gotta, not just take for granted. Okay, well that's his blood. He's following his blood. Well, I don't believe that. But like the Titanic coal, the engine. You take a piece of coal and people are seeing engineers covered in in coal dust and stuff. So wow, Oh, space in the window. Oh my God! Now I'm gonna have to look at it. Look at Blue's done. Now I can't get my eyes off this window in the back. What if we saw Bigfoot just like right behind Donnie? Would we tell Donnie, or would we wait and see what happens?
I dare it to. If there's a face out there, if you're listening, I dare you. Please.
Hey, be kind. How you doing?
Please.
So all that's crazy, but isn't that, excuse me, that's crazy with that train.
Mm-hmm.
In the long way.
Crazy with that train. Man, these jokers. Man,
well,
they shouldn't. These guys again.
Shouldn't have told.
It stresses me out. They should have had that gold. If I had that gold, man.
Just one coin at a time, because both of them were single moms.
Go to a pawn shop.
In Baltimore.
A little bit here and there.
In Baltimore.
The kids were like, "Hey, let's tell the government."
All right. So
Yeah.
I'm going to speed through a couple of these things. I got some more ghost stories and stuff for you. So let me see what we got here. Okay.
Oh
Again,
yeah, the Knights
this
of the
guy
Golden
scared the
Circle.
shit out of me. I'm sorry. But all of these guys right here in this circle, and I know you can't see my arrow, but you can see
What
here,
was
these,
Albert Pike's position again?
he was, well, he was in the Knights of the Golden Circle, and he also was like the baddest Mason walking. You know,
But
he got a lot of that
what was his
started.
like occupation? Like what was his like
No
what did
clue.
he do?
Chat, does
Oh,
anybody know what his
I'll look it up real
you
quick. I'm
know.
just kind of
But you
curious.
got John Wilkes Booth here. You got John Surratt, Jesse James, Nathan Bedford Forrest. I don't know who this fine-looking gentleman here at the bottom here at 6 o'clock is, but there you have Edward Stanton.
Oh, he was
So
a Confederate
again,
general.
yep.
Oh, he was
Oh,
a
was he?
Confederate general. Yeah,
Okay.
and an author and a poet
Oh, okay.
and all
Okay.
sorts of things. Wow, this guy seems kind of interesting.
But with this
And
guy on your cabinet, along with
he was in
others,
the Freemasons, a prominent member of the Freemasons.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Damn, he was a general.
Yeah,
Damn.
Grandmaster Dragon. I see what you're doing
Yeah.
there, Jose. I don't disagree. Um, but again, what are you going to do? All right, so I
Oh,
thought
this
this was
one.
really
Yeah.
interesting. The Copperheads. This was an offshoot of that, and it was also something that stayed in support a little bit more in the open. And I thought it was very interesting. If you look at this Copperhead here, does anybody know where that comes from? And we give the chat a chance. Wait, let me go back
Oh, go
one.
back. Go back.
Yep, there we go. I want to give the chat a chance to tell me now. Copperheads, like I said, that was just another name for another offshoot of it. But where do you think that copperhead comes from? And that's why they were called copperheads. This was like a little secret pin that they would wear. They made pins out of these. Where did that come from? There you go. And it is kind of an offshoot of Lady Liberty. It's basically where it was is probably more important of who it than who it is, because this was what was on the copper pennies back in the day.
Cisco,
They
I'll be right
actually
back.
cut this, sure. They actually
Yeah.
cut this out of a copper penny, and that's where they get the copper heads from. And why they did it, I don't have a clue. Okay. But Lincoln's face is now on the penny, and that was a little comeuppance there, if you catch my drift. This is Donnie's going to do these. Let me go down here and see what we got next. What else I can show you here? I think I had. All right, let's wait for Donnie on that one. So, some of the other places. So, Lincoln's ghost was seen by Claire and Rathbone. Rathbone winds up in the insane asylum for 27 something years, lost his damn mind. So, of course, Claire's dead. Don't know what happened to the kids. Back at the White House, he has been seen by dignitaries throughout time. There was a visiting lord and lady. She opens the door. There's a knock on the door. She opens the door. Sleeping in a Lincoln bedroom, by the way, which again was never his bedroom. It was his office. And most of the White House has been switcherooed anyway and rebuilt. There's a couple of places that are still go back in time, but if you don't know that story, that place was gutted. Eisenhower did it, and a lot of the original White House is actually buried under a baseball field that was a park not far from where the White House stands now. But so when you walk through the White House, you think, "Oh gosh, Lincoln walked through," to a degree. But I think he just goes to Lincoln bedroom because that's where people expect him. So she opens the door, and there's Lincoln standing there, and she just faints. And she's never changed her story. Many guards, many servants. He's known to be seen walking once the lights go out at the White House, walking the porch on the promenade there. And he's been seen by many people up into just a few years ago. I can imagine a lot of it, the stories have been squashed down through time, but they tend to pop out around that time, around Halloween, where local news crews go in and do the story of the local ghost story and stuff like that. But there are many accounts in journals and archives that actually, from Secret Service to servants to visiting dignitaries. Stephen, my favorite one, that during World War II, Churchill came to visit, and Churchill was staying in the Lincoln bedroom. So he was taking a bath, and when he was finished with his bath, wearing only a cigar, comes out of the bathroom and into the parlor where the fireplace is, and there standing by the fireplace is Lincoln, full bodied apparition. And he said, just as solid as I am here. And there's Churchill standing there like the day he was born, naked as a jaybird with his cigar, and sees Lincoln, and he stops. And in his cheeky little humor, he says, Mr. President, you seem to have me at a disadvantage. And Lincoln just smiled, which is rare, smiled and faded away. And that's one of the more famous stories, but so many has been seen. Now, there's one at Ford's Theater that really intrigued me, and I told Donnie about it because, as we know, our friend Rob Guttrow, if you don't know the story, I'll tell you right after this, but when the theater again became a theater 100 years after the fact, it was around the 60s. In 1974, there was a play being done there, and it was to honor Martin Luther King. And it's a play about that. And during this play, there is a speech given by the actor that's playing Martin Luther King, and he's discussing the things that he loved about Lincoln and why he revered him. And it had great emotion in it, much like, Martin Luther King spoke of him. And as this happened, the lights flickered. And all of a sudden, you heard this bang, like you would take a live microphone and drop it on an old wooden stage. The whole audience heard it, and they saw nothing. And the actor tried to continue through. And it sounded like somebody, after that sound, was running across the back of the stage. Again, they saw nothing. And went out, exited stage right, and the door opened, and out went the sound. And nobody was back there that could have done this. Now, after it was all over, yeah, Ghost mic drop, froze moments, you bet. After it was all over, that act anyway, everybody went to investigate what was that? Who made that sound? Who's messing around in the sound booth? All of these different questions were running back and forth. And they followed through and said, I heard somebody walk across this stage and go out this door. They opened the stage door to the alley. Now, this is the door Booth took, and that's the alley he left in on that horse. There is a live microphone, well, that had been disconnected and thrown out the door. Now, they blame that on Lincoln. They say that's Lincoln's ghost. I don't think so. I think that was Booth. Because we know our friend, wonderful, renowned medium and animal communicator, Rob Guttrow, went to see A Christmas Carol this last Christmas at the Ford's Theater. And
Look it up, folks. It's one of the previous episodes, by the way.
Yeah, well, good episode.
Yeah.
Good episode.
Yeah, it was a good one, too.
Called The Three Ghosts of Christmas. Or
Yeah,
Three
look it up
Spirits of
like a
Christmas.
couple years back. If you search for that, it's a good episode.
It's a good one. And he's in the gift shop, and he shuts off when he goes to places like this. He just wants to go out, and it's hard for him in the theater because he can see ghosts sitting around in the chairs and stuff, and he doesn't want to be bothered. He wants to enjoy his evening. And I always find that so funny about Rob because he does such a good job of it, but he sees these people and he just tries to say, not now, not now. And so he's in the gift shop and he's trying to stay busy and he's not thinking about anything. And he says all of a sudden he walks into this really strong, arrogant male energy. And he's trying to avoid it and trying to treat it like everything else. And he's looking through the gift shop and just trying to stay busy. And it keeps following him and hang over him. He grabs a book. And finally, he's like, okay, who are you? What do you want? Whatever, mediums say in their head, as far as, what do you want? It's my night off, whatever. And the guy says, you don't know who I am? And he's like, no, I have no idea who you are. And he's just got this arrogant kind of, just, he said he was very unpleasant energy, very proud of himself.
You
And he
could tell
says,
right away who it was
you're
too.
reading one of my books. And he looks at the front of it. He hasn't even really paying attention to what he was picking up because he was just trying to stay busy and just grab one that caught his eye. Flips it over and it was a book about John Wilkes Booth. I think John Wilkes, that makes perfect sense to me. Of course he would hang out there. People are, that's his act of great, that he did, and he's so proud of it, and he never got any kind of recognition really when he was on the run. That was one of the things he wrote in his diary, that he's being hunted and treated like a dog, and he didn't get the response he wanted. His letter never got, his manifesto, let's call it, never got put in the paper. The guy burnt that in the fire. It's like, I'm not doing that. You know, Booth had given a friend a letter and said, if something happens, have this put in the paper. I'm not having nothing to do with it. So he never saw any of that. He never got that recognition. And I do think that he was on the run, but I have my suspicions of whether or not he was the one in that barn. Because again, when you have a group like this, it's so careful and so thought out and so planned. They, if they wanted him alive, he was alive. If they wanted him dead, he was dead. Because like Oswald, like get him before he can talk.
Plus,
That
the
kind of thing.
security back then was very lax,
Mm,
very lax.
yeah,
And a lot, yeah, none of that
yeah.
stuff would have flown in today's
Yeah,
security
but
systems. Yeah.
again, also what I mean by that, a secret society or somebody wants to keep a secret, the first thing they do is throw out a lot of misinformation. We'll talk about that
Hmm.
too. But I don't. Uh, I'm not 100% sure that was Booth in there. And you saw how, Stanton, they pretended to bury him at sea, but he really got buried in the fort. And you have people that say that I identified him by the tattoo on his hand, and all this other stuff. And he had red hair, black hair. He didn't look like him. It was this guy,
I was
Boyd,
just
that they
thinking,
hired. Yeah. I don't know.
who else they recently pretended to bury at sea? Just saying,
Oh, there you go.
saying.
There
I'm
you
not
go.
gonna say
Yeah.
any names, but
Yeah.
there's been
Just saying.
someone in the past couple
It's
of
just
years that
like
got
history
buried
keeps
buried
repeating
at sea.
itself. you know, Here you got this guy that's just trying to hold the nation together and, do what's right for the nation and doesn't want war. And, they just keep battering him and, all this crap goes on and just drag him through the mud. It's crazy, you know. Can't imagine that happening today. But anyhow, Lincoln powered through and his ghost powers through too because I want to know how many mediums have really sat down and talked to him. That's gone on. Donnie and I talked about this too. Is how many people had seances in the White House? It's happened. You know, I mean, they used to be proud of it in the 70s. Anybody remember Jean Dixon? She was like the chosen White House psychic. Does anybody remember that? She sat with Nixon. I know she sat with Ford. I think who else? Does anybody in the chat remember? And they were proud of it, and then they got a hush hush again, to where like that stuff wasn't happening, or they treated it real cheeky, like, oh yeah, we're getting advice, all this sort of. But it happened, so there's been seances in there trying to talk to Lincoln. That's what I want to hear about. Reagan too. Yep, Reagan was definitely one of them. Yep, 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 yep. And his daughter. Reagan's daughter, when she came to visit, she would sleep in Lincoln's bedroom, and she said that over 50% of the time, she expected to see Lincoln's ghost walk through or stand by the fireplace. That's usually where people see him with one hand on the mantle, kind of just show up, or knocking at the door and you open it and he's there, or you open the door and nobody's there, but you feel someone come in and you almost see steps across the carpeting, or you feel the presence walking through. So, and of course, all of those are attributed to Lincoln. Other ghosts have been seen there too, Thomas Jefferson and, some other ones, and Molly, Dolly Madison, and, all the, even Abigail Adams. The soft scent of lavender is smelled, and they'll turn around and they'll see someone dressed almost like a servant back in the day, um, hanging up laundry in uh, what is now, I guess, the one of the main halls in the White House. But Abigail Adams did that. They had no furniture. There was big empty rooms. She hung her laundry right up in what you would consider the living room then.
I feel
So,
like the White House must be full of ghosts.
hmm hmm
Full of
I know it's
ghosts.
full of demons. Okay,
Full of
so
ghosts. Well,
besides,
oh yeah.
I know
You know what
that
I
for a
think
fact.
about sometimes actually, Cisco? I wonder if there's ever been a time in the White House when no one is there and in the hallway the ghost of Abraham Lincoln walks past the ghost of JFK and they kind of look at each other and Lincoln's just like,
You gotta
"Who the hell are
wonder,
you?"
right?
Yeah.
I've never heard JFK seen in the White House. I've never heard of him being seen anywhere, not even in Dallas or in Dealey Plaza or any of that. And I know that's really strange. And I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm just saying
Maybe it's in his childhood home.
I haven't seen it or heard of it.
Maybe it's in
Yeah.
his childhood home.
So it's really weird, but I mean that's a trip. I mean that's the whole Ford's Theater gets me a lot, and I think we need to separate that. I think the glow in even this we can't even jump to conclusions thinking that the glow in the balcony is Lincoln. That could be Booth as well. Do you see what I'm saying? And it would make more sense. I don't know.
It could be Mary Todd for all we
It,
know.
it could be. It could be. But I doubt it. I mean, I could see Booth being up there. This is where I did my deed and
Yeah.
watching the play and the actors and stuff. But again, we're guessing. But it makes
Or
more
maybe
sense.
even the Rathbones.
Yeah,
It could have been
it
any
just
one of
makes
them.
it makes
Yeah.
more sense. I kind of like the fact of him showing up at the fireplace and like maybe visiting other dignitaries that maybe he respects them, maybe he just likes their energy. I'd like to think that he was at rest. I'd like to think that he was visiting and not stuck anywhere. He certainly doesn't seem nailed down or, stuck in any of that. Donnie wanted to tell us a little bit more about the spiritualism that was going on at that time and a little bit about
Hmm.
more about Lincoln. He's got some
Um,
other stuff. I think this goes deeper, guys, and I'll tell you real quick and then I'm going to shut up and hand it over to
mhm.
Donnie. But I think this whole thing goes deeper. I want you to think back of what we told you about John Brown and his prophetic. People thought he was batshit crazy, but if you listen to what he said and you read what he wrote and the things he wrote while he was in jail right before he was hung, he was telling the story for almost a year and a half about the war that was coming and the rivers that would run with blood. He would name them, and it was insane. It just seems so kind of biblical in a way to me with all of these characters and this big historic thing called the Civil War. So many of these things in time across the globe. Every country's got them. But this story is just it blows my mind, man. So, do you want your pictures now, Donnie, or
Real quick, before we go there, I just want to
sure,
introduce this book.
sure,
Quick story. When I was at the convention with Cisco at Gettysburg, I was walking past the tables. I was by myself, and I was looking down at the tables, and I saw this book, and it's called "I Would Still Be Drowned in Tears," and it's about spiritualism in Abraham Lincoln's White House. And the
wow,
author's name is Michelle Hamilton. I looked down at this book. I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy this. And then
nice,
when I turned the book over and I looked at who was selling it, I was like, hey, I remember Michelle Hamilton. She was on
yep,
Cisco's show.
yep. We had a
That was
great
the
time
first
with
one,
Michelle.
and I remember that. That was one of my personal favorite shows
Hmm.
because that was the first time you were talking about Mary Todd and the White
Yep,
House,
yep.
and then this Michelle Hamilton, the lady who wrote this book that I didn't know it was her when I saw the
It's
book.
funny.
She was on that and she killed it. I mean, she was hilarious and
Yeah, yeah.
everything, and she
And
knew
see,
her
remember
stuff.
we saw what was in Lincoln's pockets when he died.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
he passed, he had two pairs of glasses. One of them was broken and fixed with a little piece of string. He had his wallet. He had a watch fob without a watch. He had a handkerchief with a Lincoln in the tiniest little cross stitch you've ever seen. It was I can't imagine the hands that did that cross stitch is amazing. And what? Oh, and he had a $5 Confederate bill. I'm guessing that $5 Confederate bill was souvenir from his trip going to Richmond to see after um, it fell, and they gave him that as a souvenir, and it was still in his coat pocket. Um, very unassuming. No money, no, not even a ticket stub, whatever. Mary must have had that in her purse. I don't know, but and his little wallet, and that was about it. He was a very simplistic man, but what a mind to have taught himself and to come this far. But again, I believe I'm going to go ahead on a limb and say I think he was an empath, which is another reason this tore him up so much, so much. I believe that he was a bit of a psychic and definitely a very heavy prophetic dreamer, without a doubt. And he would walk around, especially the last couple of years in the White House, and tell people, um, I'm not going to live through this. And, very much the same as Martin Luther King said, I might not get there with you. I might not get there. I might not make it to the end. I mean, I think sometimes these people know, very much. John Brown, same thing, you know, and I'm sure there's many we can name that had the same. So the spiritualism was something that, and I'll say this and let Donnie go. Again, like I said, Lincoln was encouraging Mary because it seemed to help her after Willie. And then when he starts getting this information that's matching with what he's seeing without them knowing, he started to find some comfort there as well. But I researched this as much as I could, that he was getting complaints that the war was being fought on a Ouija board when there's no evidence that he ever took advice from any of these things and just did that. Everything he did was extremely analytical and thought through.
Yeah, there is. Sorry,
Oh, you
not
got
to
some?
disagree, but yeah, there
Did
is.
you?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
If I'm wrong there, but if
Um,
when he got that one, I'm going to tell at the end, about
to
the
be fair,
one
I
where,
wouldn't say evidence. I'd say more accounts, but it's a matter of whether or
yeah,
not you believe what that person's saying. So
it's
it's
true.
not
Well,
real evidence. Yeah.
in all honesty, Donnie, this is it's all that, is it not? Because it's history, and we're just trying to piece together through journals and private people and letters back and forth that match up with this. And you know, uh, it seems like you can use the Knights of the Golden Circle as a thing here. I mean, I honestly, as much as I knew about Booth and the whole thing and his 11 days and mud, I mean, you can know a bunch about this over here. And then this one other piece comes in, it's snap, you know, and you got to go look at that. And it's just going down all these rabbit holes. It's more like a ping pong ball. You get flippers and the rubber bouncers, and you're hitting corners, and you're racking up poison, tilting like crazy. It's more exciting like that because you go, oh my God, that piece fits here. But I have, at this point, I'm with David Keene. I have little doubt that this wasn't an orchestrated conspiracy. I've seen it before. It's nothing new, but it just never seems to amaze you. You know what people will go through to twist
It's a
the future.
conspiracy that ultimately
Yeah,
failed.
yeah, and that goes with anybody in the paranormal too. I mean, there was a lot of fake photographs. I'd look at that one photograph, the famous one with Lincoln stand behind. The things I've heard about that, now I look at it differently. So all of this. So I urge you guys, if you're interested, to dig down into, find your authors and stuff that touch you, but keep digging into this, because I think the worst thing you can hear from somebody is it's 159 years ago. What does it have to do with me? One, it's your history. Two, these people did amazing things with very little for many ungrateful people and a few trusted comrades and brothers and family and tribe. And you ask yourself, whether you're talking about the Revolutionary War, or the taking of a hill in Vietnam, or you know people trying to live in huts and in their village, and have invaders come in any continent. you know what makes you stand, what makes you be heroic? It's trying to hold your what you have now, that you're taking for granted every day. When people start to try to take it away from you, it becomes more precious, and it brings out the warrior in you. And there's a lot of warriors in this story, a lot of them, you know.
And anyone who dismisses history excuses stupidity. That's what I
Yeah.
say.
Is that a bumper sticker?
Oh,
All
that's what I
right,
made up
so
just now.
here is your thing, man. This one, we did that one. We did the Isn't that crazy about the penny
Okay.
though? Here you go,
I'm going to
Donnie.
talk a bit about this. Now, there's some things that people need to understand about spiritualism. Um, First and foremost, you have to understand that people back then, they didn't really have much to do. Okay. So it was either go to church or go to a play. There were no sports, there was no music, there was no public events other than going to a play or going to a seance. See, the thing that people don't understand about the spiritual movement at the time, of like when Lincoln was in office, that shit was mainstream, right? Because people in the paranormal community now, I always keep hearing them talk about you. What if belief in the paranormal or paranormal podcasts were mainstream? What would America look like? And this is what America looked like, because spiritualism was mainstream. Like, it was one of the primary forms of entertainment for the upper and middle class, like to go out. Other than plays, they would go to seances or they would have private readings. Like people, psychics, and there were certain psychics and mediums who were household names. They didn't have many other entertainment options, so people just went to seances. Like, and Washington was, because of the Civil War, was like the mecca of spiritualism, and they had like military officers taking their families, poor families wanting to know about like where their family member is, their missing soldier in their family. It was all over the place, and because of the Civil War, it was super popular and super common, and everyone just knew about it. So when people talk about, oh, Mary Todd practiced spiritualism, yeah, so was everyone else. So was like a whole bunch of other people, and all of her friends were doing it as well. Like everyone in most cities were freaking doing it because that's what they did, right? So this is the paranormal community in its past form, when at one point it was mainstream. This is what people don't understand about spiritualism in the mid 19th century. It was mainstream, right? So the woman on the right, that's Nettie Coburn. That is Mary Todd's and Abraham Lincoln's personal psychic medium for the longest. I mean, they went through several, but she was there the longest. And she was a very gifted psychic. She was a household name because people knew her as one of the best psychics in the country, and they knew her as the girl who was advising Mary Todd and Abe Lincoln. Um, and a lot of what Michelle Hamilton talks about is her memoirs, like basically her. So again, you got to take it with a grain of salt because this is all coming from word of mouth of a person, but a person who was an actual player in that story,
Hey, Donnie,
right?
can I
Yeah,
jump in here a second?
yeah.
That that's amazing about her. There was also two sisters that lived not far. I think it was the other side of Germantown. It might have been in Germantown. That were
The
also
Lorries,
famous. So, Lord, yeah,
yeah,
uh,
they were the ones. The Lorries were the ones that actually introduced Nettie Colburn,
yeah,
her, to Mary Todd. They were all
amazing.
friends together.
There was so much going on, and it's just natural, like Donnie says, all this emotion and everything else. I mean, of course, it's a hot time for this. But I did want to ask one very important question. Uh, the lovely lady sitting in the middle of this little group here with the look on her face here.
Yeah.
Do you have any info on her? Because
No, I think that's just like a stock photo to show like what
she,
spiritualism like looked like back then. I have no
she,
idea about the background of that picture.
if you look up batshit crazy in the dictionary, right here, that face in the middle there, that might be it. Just
Yeah,
sorry to
actually,
jump in there, Donnie, but that was just too much
no,
fun
Bowden
there.
is absolutely correct. Even though it was mainstream, and probably because it was mainstream, there were also a lot of hucksters and a lot of scam artists, and it became really hard to differentiate the
Yep,
two. And actually, Abe Lincoln trusted her as his
yep,
person, as a
yep.
psychic and a medium. He attended a lot
Just
of
like
the
today.
he and
Just
Mary
like
Todd
today.
actually attended a lot of seances. He didn't just
Yep,
go to one or two.
yep. It's
They
true.
were
It's true.
semi-regular. In fact,
Hmm.
it was the only time when he and Mary Todd would hang out as a couple,
Yeah.
because his schedule is so filled with like
Hmm.
Civil War stuff, government business. that the only time they ever got to hang out as a couple was at the seances with her, right? But then there was another psychic and medium who tried to worm his way in, right? That Charles Colchester guy who was a total scam artist. And Lincoln was able to debunk him. He trusted Nettie
Mhm.
Coburn, but he
Mhm.
debunked that other guy.
Mhm. 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 Absolutely true. And it's also funny because, like I was telling Brian, he knows as well as I do. You could be in a room full of people that are interested in this, and you know, it's the same now as it was then. There are hucksters and there's cheaters and there's people make up stories. There's people that take other people's stories. There's people that twist and put all that stuff together. There's people that make up stories about seeing Bigfoot, and then there's people that actually have amazing stories involving real experiences with. It's just the same. 159 years later, it's the same.
Yeah.
So, but this was so big, so
And
big.
this Nettie Coburn, she gained their trust.
Yeah.
They knew each other for years, right? So they really
Mhm.
trusted her, and never once in her biography does she ever try to like scum them or screw them
Mm,
over. I
mm.
think a couple times she accidentally leaked stuff to the press, but that was because she was so naive and she didn't realize what was going on
How
until
do
they
you
told her, "Hey,
accidentally?
don't talk about that kind of stuff," because it was very unpopular. Like everyone kind
How
of
do you
knew
leak
about it.
stuff?
The public kind of knew that Lincoln was involved in the spiritual movement. It
She
wasn't that
accidentally
he
tipped
did
over a reporter.
seances, it was he was involved in that scene.
Hmm.
People in that scene, big psychics and mediums, all claim to have had a seance with Lincoln at some point because he would just go to these because that was the only way he and Mary Todd would hang out.
Yeah, and
So
also
it
it
was
was
like a
kind of
Saturday night thing.
calming. It was kind of
Yeah,
calming. I mean, it
yeah.
wasn't,
And
you
he
know,
was all about it because it was the only thing that kept Mary Todd calm with all the grieving. It was like the
mhm.
only thing that helped her with the grieving, so he was all for it.
Is this one of the cartoons that they put
Yeah,
out
no,
to
this
make fun
actually
of it?
happened. This actually happened with the Nettie Coburn, the lady I was telling you about.
Oh,
And
cool.
as the story goes, when the piano started raising, right, and like he still believed it. Everyone still believed it, but even though he still believed it, Lincoln, him jumping up and trying to sit on that piano, he was like doing it as a joke. Like everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's a ghost," and Lincoln's like, "It's a ghost," and then he started laughing. He's like, "I'm gonna sit on it," and then he runs and jumps up and tries to like sit on it.
It's kind of fun to
Yeah,
see him in a. I like the funny Lincoln. I like the Lincoln,
yeah.
but you know what? At the same time, he's making the joke and he's doing this.
He
He's
would joke a lot.
also, yeah. But humor's the thing, man. And it's also, if you listen, you learn a lesson. It was kind of like the cheeky kind of humor along with extremely analytic life lessons and advice at the same time, or whatever it was you're talking about. That's a broad brush, but
Um,
I mean, a parable is a parable, an
a
anecdote is an
real
anecdote. But sometimes, if the storyteller is good enough, they can be both.
mhm,
Just like in Native American, all my Native American friends here that understand Native American, when any indigenous tribe gets together, they start tell that storyteller is so important to that village, because not only do they tell history but lessons and morals and uh, warnings, to safety kind of things, to watch out for on your journey. And I mean, the same with him. I mean, if you watch something like Carl Sandburg's Lincoln, you'll get a lot of that in there because they're very precise to the journals and the speeches and the writings of the people that were in the room. That when he spoke and told a funny joke, there were so many answers in that one thing, and it drove Stanton crazy. And that's why he called him an ape. And every time he started to tell a story, he would get angry and storm out of the room, or it's something. But it's great to see him like this, man. Thanks for
um,
this picture. Great picture.
but one of the oh yeah, so this was a British cartoon making fun of Abe Lincoln for falling for spiritualist bullshit, according to them. Like this went out in like British media, and it was basically if you look at the guy sitting like with the beard, that's supposed to be Abe Lincoln, and the lights are supposed to be turned
Oh,
off, and he's supposed to be believing in ghosts,
and
and
the
meanwhile
stuff
these freaking guys are just
flying
banging
around.
pants together. This is
Oh
like
wow.
British humor mocking Abe Lincoln for being involved in the spiritualist movement. Like he was being name dropped all the time by these big shot psychic mediums.
I don't know, Brian, but Lincoln knew about the
And
theater event. He
if
went
you look,
anyway.
if you
I
start
think he
looking,
was told. Huh?
if you start looking into the whole spiritualism scene back then, a
Hmm.
lot of them would do like these public
Oh,
lectures, which were
you guys
basically
again.
like their equivalent of like podcasts, right?
Right, right.
So a lot of these spiritualists would like publish books and give lectures. But the thing is, it was one of the only ways that women could get work.
Hmm.
So a lot of women did it, and a lot of them started making a lot of money, and a lot of them
Right,
started using their clout to like push political agendas like abolitionism, right?
right.
A lot of the spiritualists were very ardent supporters of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was not all that popular
And I
at
can't
the
find
time
this
in the
book.
North amongst like a lot of states and a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people opposed that in the North when he first announced it. But a lot of these spiritualists and like in their meetings, in their public lectures, they would actually espouse, like while they were channeling some being, they're like, oh, you must support the Emancipation Proclamation and,
Hmm.
end slavery. Because that's what they would do. They would channel these entities, right? And they would
Hmm.
communicate
Hmm.
as them.
Yeah, like
And
half of
that
it
was the
was.
main form of entertainment in America at that
I
time.
don't
That's
know if
crazy.
Michelle added it in her book, but he even stated that he knew that a lot of this was just nonsense, but he would also, like you said, enjoy being with Mary. It was a quiet time. She was calm, which was a big deal. And he did quite a few times get accurate predictions. But Bowden was asking, how did she miss the theater event? Nobody
Oh, okay.
did.
I can explain
He,
that. She actually
a
moved
lot of
back.
people told
I,
him.
I can explain that. She actually moved back to upstate New York because she had to take care of her like sick father. Like I
Mhm,
think 2 years before those events, but she was still in contact with a lot of the media. But Mary Todd was still seeing like the Lories that Cisco mentioned.
mhm.
Like she was still friends. It was a whole circle. It was like a whole
Yeah,
community.
it was.
If Mary Todd were alive today, she'd be right there in the chats with the rest of us. She'd be like obsessed with all these paranormal
Being about to
channels, and
crazy.
that's
She'd be
what
getting a
that's
blue
she
rinse
got
every
so
5 minutes.
obsessed with the paranormal because of like, just
She'd have a lot of
all the grief
cupcakes.
she was dealing with. And plus there was nothing else to do, and plus all of her friends were psychics and mediums.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean,
Other
it
than
really
that,
was so
her
many
other
people.
friends were, even her political friends, like the housewives of the senators,
Hmm.
they would all just go to seances together. That's
Hmm.
like what they did, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, and a lot of times they try to keep it secret. They were just there was almost like they were their own secret society because again, it got out and things leaked to the press. But there's so much going on. I mean, think about all this all at
Oh,
once, and there's a civil war. And it was just insane. But I believe, and I want to make it stated that the real is mixed with the fake here. And one of those that picture where I tried to find it, Lincoln standing behind Mary. I found out something about that. Did you?
um, wait, Lincoln found out about what?
I said I found something out about
Uh,
that. I thought that was
Found out
fake
about
when I
what?
first looked at it. The
Found out about
ghost of
what?
Lincoln standing behind Mary, the picture.
Oh, the picture I sent you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was
That
so
one,
last
I
minute. Did you
thought
get
that
that
was
in there?
fake, but now I'm wondering. I don't know. I can't find it. I was looking.
According No, actually, according to the book, that was
Mhm,
one of the last photos of Mary Todd Lincoln alive ever.
mm, mhm, mhm. But she also, I did not know that she was trying to debunk a lot of these mediums and people, and she heard about this guy's photography, and she went in under an
Hmm.
assumed name
Yeah, yeah.
with a veil over her face and only lifted that veil right before. And the way it was
Hmm.
stated to me, it was almost like she had debunked it to where it was uh, real. And I don't know the process he used, but if you want to dig into that, it's worth digging into a little bit more. The photographer's name was Mueller or something like that.
Oh,
I know he went on to do
I
other
could speak
things.
on that. Um,
Please do. But she tried to fake it to fake him out and couldn't do
um,
it. So
so what
I don't know.
happened? what happened was after Lincoln was assassinated and after the funeral, I believe what happened was she kind of fell out with the whole spiritualism community.
Mm.
There's nothing to indicate that she stopped believing in it, and at this point, it was seen as like an entire religious movement. But she wound up traveling to Europe and staying there. She didn't really find much satisfaction, but she always kept books. So she would just read books and just study like the theory, but she would never attend seances because she got kind of tired of all the. You can tell she just kind of wanted to get away with from people in general.
Right.
You know, she just
Yeah.
wanted to read like a couple books from good spiritualists that she enjoyed and she liked, and she would keep those books with her. And as she was traveling, she was just kind of reading that. So by the time she reached that photographer, she had already kind of been through it, right? She had
Mhm.
already, like, one of them tried to blackmail her. Like, she knows the difference between a good psychic and
Right.
a
Well,
huckster,
and
right? At
again,
this
you
point.
also got 159 years in between it, and we're digging up old stuff, and this is like from different historians and different scholars. And there's people that won't even talk about this. I mean, look at all the historians that talk about Lincoln, and very few have come up and said this secret society that said they were going to do it took pledges to never sleep and never, rest until it was done. I mean,
They had no
right out
qualms
there in
about
the
it. They're like, yeah,
all the
we're gonna.
newspapers,
That's
everything
what we're
back
gonna
then.
do.
They weren't keeping it a secret,
No, not
you
at
know.
all.
And
They were
159
they were
years
like they
later,
were placing ads in the paper. They
nobody
were
knows.
placing ads in the paper saying, "Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna kill Lincoln." They were like
but
pronouncing it. You know,
yeah.
it's
And the thing,
crazy.
and still, all these, people up there talking about the life of Lincoln, they don't really lead with that. Like we know that Stanton was in on it. They kept Stanton kept the road open. The only road Booth took, he left open, right? He'd been known to all the just thing after thing. The 18 pages missing out of the diary, back and forth, back all of it. It's crazy. But one of the predictions he got from several different spiritualists, whatever you want to say, was that his cabinet was all working against him and out for nobody but themselves. Well,
Hmm.
I think you didn't have to be psychic at that point to see that. But there's one other thing we want to get in here because it's getting late, and I don't
Can I?
know, Donnie. You want to
Sorry, can
add
I just
anything
add one
else?
last point about the spiritualism?
Yes, please.
To address another point to Brian's question earlier about why she
Oh,
didn't.
sure.
Um, the other thing you have to notice was like every psychic in America was basically sending Lincoln letters about his assassination. He was
Mhm.
getting
So
bombarded
much.
from like
That's
the high level
I can
psychics
back
to
that
like
up.
amateur psychics. Like they could all just send him letters and he had to sit there and read them. He was so inundated with predictions of his assassination. He was just like so tired of it. He was just like,
Well, he
"Oh,
had it
another
himself.
psychic's predicting I'm going to be okay,
The
whatever."
most important thing, Donnie, is let's remember the famous story of him hearing the sobbing in the White House and everything else, asking the guard. I mean, how much more in your face do you have to get? And that was 10 days before. 10 days before. The guard, the man that basically took care of opening and closing the door, kind of like the butler at the White House, whatever, he saw him and knew it was the last time he was going to see him. He did not want to go to the play. He was supposed to go to a play with his son, which was playing not far away from the Ford's Theater, which was Aladdin. And little Tad heard that his father, the president, had been shot while he was at that play, Aladdin. And that's the one he was going to go to. He wanted to cancel it. He just wanted to chill and have a good day. I mean, he was feeling good, but that's how he used to get before all the major turns in the Civil War and major things that happened in his life, before a death or before his son died, um, most recently there in the White House. And Willie was the only body to accompany his father on that long train. And it's
Hmm.
all very, very sad. And it never really stopped there with Lincoln's body. We're looking here at what is supposed to be John St. Helen, who was also changed his name to David E. George. This is one of Steve's favorites. But I'm talking about the body of Lincoln. Was once he was interred, he was moved 16 times There was 3 attempts to kidnap the body. One of the more famous ones was involved some counterfeiters out of Chicago, I believe it was, and 3 men conspired together to kidnap Lincoln's body to for 20. I think it was $200,000, and to get one of their friends out of prison who was the best counterfeiter that was out there, and they wanted their plate maker back, and they were going to kidnap Lincoln's body and hold it for ransom for that. But they talked about it in a bar, and they got an undercover cop in there that kind of went along with them, and somebody wound up shooting in the middle of it. We're not sure who, but they got away, were soon caught, but did get into the sarcophagus of Lincoln's body and had the casket pulled out. So halfway. So it is amazing what that man had been through. Um, they finally moved his body several times, trying to hide it. There was a couple of different tombs. Then there was a monument being built, and the foundation wasn't very good. And Thomas, his only living son, um, said, "That's it. I'm done with the playing around. I want it sunk in the ground 10 feet in a metal cage covered in cement, and I don't want anybody to really know where it was." So it is in the Lincoln Tomb Memorial right now, but it's not exactly where the stone is where it says. And Mary is there and her sons. But this fella here, do you want to say anything on Booth? Like I said, if they wanted him dead, he was dead. If they wanted him alive, he would be alive, and there would be a lot of
Well,
stories.
there is reason to suspect that maybe Booth never died in the first place. If
Right.
you're going to believe the official account of how Booth died, basically, the official account says that Booth was internally decapitated.
Yeah.
If you guys know what that means, it's basically when your neck vertebrae is severed, but all your
Mhm.
meat is connected. They call that an internal decapitation. And apparently that's what happened to Booth when he got shot through the neck. That's why when they lifted his hands up so he could see it, he was like useless because he was like basically
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Um,
But again, that might not have been Booth.
but that might
And
not have been Booth
so
because the
this
book
guy
that I
right
was
here.
reading was contesting the angle of the bullet wound and saying that no, that came from a higher angle. It
Yep.
couldn't have been the guy because that guy that they said officially did it was standing on the same level as him.
Hmm. True.
So there's question there.
There's questions all over the
There's a
board
lot
here
of questions with the coroner's
with you.
reports.
Hmm.
There's a lot of questions. And even questions about the guy who shot him. And Cisco mentioned brought those up. Like that guy was a weirdo, and
Hmm.
then those
Castrated
18
himself.
pages getting ripped out, and then the guy
Castrated
who
himself.
yeah, and then the guy who was in charge of that unit was poisoned by his brother-in-law while who was working for
Arsenic.
Edmund Stanton,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you know
It just keeps going. I'm
and then
telling.
there's like I don't know. Did you know much? Did you come across much of like people like eyewitness accounts of like Booth if that had not been his body, like people who had seen like, oh, I saw Booth like down in
Yeah,
Texas or
there's
whatever.
there's a few. This is a crazy little story. I'll tell it real quick that has
Yeah.
to do with this. So this is actually John St. Helens, also known as David E. George. Now, the fun part about this is in 1877, a man was wanted to confess something on his dying bed, so he sent for his lawyer. The lawyer here happened to be Phineas Bates, and Phineas Bates is actually the grandfather of Kathy Bates, the actor. This is
Misery.
verified by a couple of different stories. Yeah, by a couple of
Yeah.
different sources. I think that's pretty cool. So anyway, Bates goes and listens to this man, and this man happened to be John St. Helens. And his dying words, and I quote, "I am dying. I must tell you, my name is John Wilkes Booth. I am the assassin of President Lincoln." Now the kicker here, the lawyer leaves. John St. Helens
Where
doesn't
was this?
die.
Where was this?
This was in, I don't know, but he was in his dying bed, Donnie. I don't know where
Okay.
it was, out in the west somewhere. So anyway, Uh, John St. Helens lived, he skips out of town and changes his name to David E. George. Okay. Now he's supposedly, to everybody in this little village where he's staying and trying to stay incognito, knows that he's a troubled soul. Apparently, he tried to commit suicide a couple of times by drinking arsenic. And this one time he succeeded. They write about it in the newspaper, and this lawyer Bates, Kathy Bates' grandfather, this lawyer Bates hears about it, gets on a train, and goes out there to try to claim the body. And it goes on this wild ride of winding up in, I guess he dies and his wife sells it or something to a fair and a carnival, goes around the carnival. Bates himself, when he first goes to claim the body, he finds it extremely well embalmed, all sitting up here in the chair in a suit. And the guy was saying, this is how, what a secret it was. He was saying, come meet the man who killed President Lincoln. It was charging like a nickel to go in and see him. Then he winds up in the carnival where people are, the tradition was to take your 5-cent ticket and stick it in his, try to stick it in the slit in his mouth. And toward the end, he kind of wound up looking like that. Oop. Trigger warning. But that's horrible. What do you think, Donnie? I don't know. I think it sounds like a lot of misinformation
Was
to
that
get you
picture
to find out what really
the
happened. But
earlier picture with the side by side of the two dead bodies? Was that a picture of the actual body that was being shown at the circus, or?
yes, this is what it winded. Finally, it went on to something else. And it was
Okay,
so well embalmed that people were buying this thing. This was him sitting up in the
you know
chair.
what? I gotta look at a picture of John Wilkes Booth alive and look at it side by side to
Yeah,
see if it looks
yeah.
like him or not. Because what I'm looking at right now doesn't
Oh, it's
really
not that.
look like him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who knows, dude? That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I mean, usually when things like this happen, to get your eye off of what really happened, there's a lot of wild, misinformation with a little fact thrown in there, just to throw you off when you really should be looking over here. And, you know, they just got Booth out of there and put some poor Patsy Sap in there and shot him before he could talk. Had him look a little like Booth with red hair, supposedly, from most accounts, you know. Um, who's to say? Like I said, the only thing I'm sure of, that if this group wanted him alive, he was alive. If they wanted him dead, he'd be dead. That's all I'm sure of. And I'm pretty darn sure that Stanton was in on it because there's just too much information pointing
Yeah.
towards him and the people he hung with. It's kind of like, if nothing else, guilt by association, I guess. You know, he did some pretty crazy things there at the end. Uh, the most important thing is after 16 times being moved, he is in a beautiful. I didn't get your pictures. I'm sorry, I got a little behind today. I was going to get pictures of the tomb and stuff, but you can look it up where he's buried. It's absolutely gorgeous, and there's a thing that you can walk through, much like the stuff in Gettysburg that we saw there, Donnie. That last monument, where you can walk up in it. This you can go deep in it, and there's all the different brass statues of Lincoln throughout his life as you walk through. So you're really trying to remember the man that went, from a little log dirt floor cabin in Kentucky, to Illinois, and became a president at a hard time. But I wonder, was that by accident or was it predestined? And I think Donnie's got something he's going to tell us. It's kind of going to zap you to the end
Oh,
of this.
we going way woo now.
Way woo. And
Yeah, we're cranking up the woo level, folks here. So
I'm going to
be
tell you up front, I have absolutely zero problem believing this chat. And I want to see what you think. I'm on the edge of my seat to see what you think about this, but consider it, listen through it, and then decide with an open mind and see what you think. Hit
is
him, Donnie. Hit
is
him, Donnie.
Bowden still in the chat? Because Bowden will
I
know
don't.
what I'm talking about. I don't
Yeah,
know if he's still in the chat or not.
he would be thinking along the lines I'm thinking. But go ahead, tell it.
No, because he's read the same source that I read, but
Okay.
it's called the raw material. Basically, in the early '80s, this woman was channeling the supernatural. Well, it was an extraterrestrial,
Kind of
interdimensional
like the
entity.
Seth. Kind of like the Seth
Kind
Seth?
of like the Seth, but not really,
Yeah.
because Seth was human.
Okay.
Because I read that as well.
Similar.
Seth was at one point a person, a human being. Ra was something else. Ra was like an alien entity that had never been human. It
Okay.
just happened to be speaking English. And it's just like, hey, this is what I'm here to tell you, and you can buy it or not, you know?
Yep.
Um, that was the raw material. And at one point in this, and they wrote down the entire set of questions and answers. And at one point, they asked this interdimensional entities, like, what was the deal with Abraham Lincoln? And I have the actual quote if you want me to read it out for you, what
Please
it said
do.
word for word.
Whatever you'd like to do, whatever you think is best. This is
Okay. And by the way, I just got to add, I personally do not say that I believe this, nor do I say that I disbelieve this. It's just something I read. That's it. Okay. So the question was, well, in that case, I like to
But
know.
I got to say this just to finish that off there and give it a
Mhm.
nice fringe. Can you dig it? I can. Can you dig it?
Okay. So the question was, well, in that case, I like to know the motivation for this use of Abraham Lincoln's body at that time, right? Um, like what was essentially the question is what was the deal with Abraham Lincoln, right? And this all-knowing spiritual cosmic being. And this is the being's answer. I am Ra. This shall be the last query of this session, as we find the instrument quite low in vital energies. Basically, it's saying that the girl channeling it is like getting real tired. The one known as Abraham has an extreme difficulty in many ways and, due to physical, mental, and spiritual pain, was weary of life, but without the orientation of self destruction. Basically, saying that he was like depressed, but he wasn't suicidal. Continue. In your time, 1853, this entity, Abraham, was contacted in sleep by a fourth density being. This being was concerned with the battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, which have been waged in fourth density for many of your years. This entity, Abe again, accepted the honored duty of completing the one known as Abraham's karmic patterns, and the one known as Abraham discovered that this entity would attempt those things which the one known as Abraham desired to do, but it felt it could not. So what it's basically saying is, at some point in 1953 or 1853, Abe Lincoln was visited by this higher dimensional being in his sleep, based and saying, "Listen, there's this big battle going on." And Abe Lincoln's like, I can't handle this. And then this cosmic being's like, let me take over. And what it's saying is that the soul of Abraham Lincoln, the man, was put into like the stasis state.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the walk in.
Yeah.
Tell me, this is not the first time you've heard this. Now think about it. Think about it. It makes some sense. Go back and think about John Brown. What did he predict? Was he just psychic, or was somebody really
Did this
talking
higher level
some of these
being
people?
take over his body at some point in 1953? And I actually looked into what happened in Lincoln's life in 1953. That was like a year
What
or
was
two after or not in 1853,
he was
because it
spent
said specifically this happened, this dream
right?
occurred in 1853 where there was a switch.
Yeah,
And I looked into what 1853 was in Abraham Lincoln's timeline. That was like a year or two after his first son's death.
yeah,
Or
yeah. He was
whose death? It was Eddie's, right? Willie was in the White House. Eddie was the first death.
Eddie died in Springfield, Illinois, at the age of 4. Before he got to the White House, Willie was in the White House
That
at
was
age
like, yeah, I
11.
think that was like, and then like a year or two later, he was so depressed with everything. And
Yep.
that's where, according to the raw material, this dream occurred and the switch happened
I mean, it
within his
makes
soul.
sense. Chat, think about this. It makes sense. It's not the first time we've heard that this can happen in history, where people, step in or walk in, and it's a dual. Both parties agree. It's like I'm driving for a while. Now
Can I?
again, you could look at it a different way and say it's possession, But if you add it all up together and you really fly out there to get that full view past 40,000 feet and get it all, it could make sense in times as as heavy it was going on globally at this time.
This
Possible.
entity continues and says that, don't get it twisted, this kind of thing is extremely rare. That's what it said. It was like, this is very rare. This doesn't happen usually. But it goes into why it happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is
Mm-hmm.
real interesting.
Yeah.
It
Tell it.
says, okay, and I quote, the planetary energies at this time were at what seemed to be to this entity to be at a critical point, like the entity that's controlling Abraham Lincoln. It's at a, like, basically all the energies that's going on, everything's at a critical point. For that which you know as freedom had gained in acceptance as a possibility among many peoples. This entity saw the work done by those beginning the democratic concept of freedom, as you call it, in danger of being abridged or abrogated by the rising belief and the use of the principle of the enslavement of entities or other people. This is a negative concept of a fairly serious nature in your density, basically in your dimension. This entity, therefore, went forward into what it saw as the battle for light, for healing of a rupture in the concept of freedom. And that's why it said that happened.
Read that last line again, Donnie.
This entity,
Right?
therefore, went forward into what it saw as a battle for the light, for the healing of a rupture in the concept of freedom.
So, what do you guys think? Is that something you think might be possible? I can't say it isn't. You know what I'm saying? And if it was needed in a time of
He was a mega soul.
great,
He was another mega soul.
yeah, great, so much is on the line here. A large part of humanity, and suffering. And if we're supposed to be learning, I guess, and stop the suffering and learn how to reach out and help one another and just be decent human beings. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
people have heard of Ra.
Things like
Okay,
this
you
would
guys know what I'm
happen.
talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's certainly written in the Bible. It's certainly written in many spiritual documentation throughout millennia, right? So
It's all
who's
good.
to
You
say
don't
if
have to
there is
believe it. I'm not like espousing it. I'm not
no?
preaching it.
I'm
I have no
saying
dog in that race. It's just
I
something I
believe it's
read. It's an
possible.
interesting
I
point of
believe it's
view.
possible.
It's an
I
interesting
believe it's
point of view.
possible. It's not the first time I've heard it, and I think a lot of things could explain why he could have just been psychic and had these prophetic dreams. The thing that gets me is he made a conscious choice to stand. He made a conscious choice to hold his line and say, this is what I believe in. And despite all of this coming at me, the threats, the secret societies, the batshit crazy relatives, the rumors, the newspapers, the everything, he stood and he fought for what he believed in. And so did many, many, many in the Civil War on both sides. Many a good, young, promising life lost theirs on the field of battle. And many people fought for their very freedom for literally to be released from chains and just be treated, you know, like others would want to be treated and have that pursuit of happiness. And I think that's the crescendo of all of these episodes coming together following one life, the possibilities of what one person can do to change a world that has gone absolutely mad.
And I wholeheartedly believe that walk-ins are real. Like,
Mhm.
I think that could happen. Sometimes
Sure.
the other side just sees shit that's going on in this
I
world and
got
is
this for a
like, you
minute.
know
Yeah.
what? We got to do something. This is getting
Hmm.
too crazy.
It makes you wonder, right? I mean, if bad things can jump in you and do bad things, why couldn't good things with good intent jump in you to help you do a good thing? Why not? And again, how many times, like our founding fathers and the ones that really got out there and fought and found and reached down and found that, did they have spiritual help in some way? Not maybe not a jump in or a walk in or a push, but just spirit guides, and you've all got them. So through your hard times, ask for help. It's free will. You've got to reach out and you've got to give them permission to show you or guide you. They're not going to do it for you. That's why it's called a guide. You know, it's your free will, and it's highly possible. I think this story has so many heroes in it and so many villains and so much heroics, and it basically comes down to human beings just striving to be free and want to live their life, live and let live kind of thing, right? But I got to honor the man for everything he did. I don't agree with everything, but I think he was definitely worth trying to get through these episodes.
Oh,
And
he was clearly and very easily the greatest American who ever lived. I don't think there's even like a close second.
I mean,
There's
look at the
not even a
stack of
close
books
second.
and
There's not
everything
even.
else. If you want more information on this, I highly recommend again, David Keene, The Knights of the Golden Circle. Um, and see what you think.
Yeah.
Again, Donnie, the book you're reading by Michelle Hamilton is called what?
I would still be drowned in tears. It's a quote that actually Mary Todd gave to one of her friends. Like she was like, one of the things she would do is not only was she involved in spiritualism, she would try to like get people into it. She would try to preach it to like
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
skeptical friends. And
Hmm.
one of the things she told one of her friends was, if not for spiritualism and Nettie Colburn and her readings, I would still be drowned in tears. And this was like 3 or 4 years after the death of Willie.
Absolutely sad. And with profound times. There was a lot, like John Brown said, there was gnashing of teeth, and no home would go untouched by the war that was coming.
Well, John
And
Brown was not wrong, that's for sure.
yeah, and say what you want. Lincoln, saw that to the end. He got 4 days, 4 days uh, to appreciate and plan for the future and to help the South get back up and, in the Union as well and heal a wounded country, with malice toward none. And, it's definitely an inspiration, like I said, that one person can do. But, it's like one, there's a quote, never doubt that a small group of dedicated and devoted individuals can change the world. Do you know why, Donnie? It's the only thing it ever has, man. It's the only thing it ever has. So don't forget that. And Lincoln is an inspiration to show what one person can do just by standing and trying to do the right thing. And, with all this going on, when he married Mary, they were engaged. He broke it off. He got cold feet. He went through an awful lot of, a great
They broke up
deep
for a year while
depression.
they were recording, actually. They broke
Yeah,
up for a
9
year.
months. 9
Yeah.
months, yeah. And then he finally went back, and when he gave her the wedding ring, inscribed within it is something that, if nothing else that you ever get from my show or from watching me or from this chat, is the quote that's inside that ring. And the words are, love is eternal. So remember that, and I think what we do is accountable. And I think Lincoln tried to do his best. Donnie, we're ready to go out here. I got a little video just in remembrance. It's a nice way to close off 5, 6 episodes of this man's life and a little bit of the Civil War, a little bit of Gettysburg. And Donnie, is there anything you want to say before we play this?
First and foremost, I am amazed at how well we kept to our outline. Damn, Cisco, we knocked it
We,
out of the park on this
we
one.
nailed it. It took 3
Yeah,
hours. We said it couldn't be
yeah.
done, Donnie, but we
I
hung
was
in there
doubting
good.
if we could go through all this material in like a timely
There's
manner,
so
but it's
much
not
more.
even 3 hours, and we basically covered our main points. I was like, holy crap, we're ahead of schedule. This has never happened before. This has
I
never
mean, I
happened.
promised Joe we were going to end with this. A
Yeah.
lot of people didn't stick with us because,
Oh, and the second
they
thing
weren't
was
interested in, but that's
from
fine.
me to you, Cisco. I was quite surprised tonight because there were a lot of like bombs I was gonna drop, but then you mentioned it first. I was like, oh shit, Cisco already knew about that. What? Because I thought I had some bombs ready. Oh, wait, there's one bomb I left
Hit
out
me.
that I
Hit
know,
me.
the voodoo story.
Oh,
Because you hadn't
tell it.
heard about that voodoo
No,
story,
no,
and
no,
this
no. I
one's a
don't know this
doozy.
one. Okay, that's good.
Okay,
Take us out. And then we got our little video, and then,
so
with it.
when okay, so this is according in this book. Basically, they have an account from Abraham Lincoln's cousin who grew up around him and knew his father, and they were both on business when at first Abraham Lincoln was 19 with his cousin, and they sailed. They went down the river over to New Orleans, and while there, they were there for business. But then they also met a voodoo priestess, right? Like Lincoln was like, this is his first time away from home. He's in this crazy city. He's walking around. He's like, what's going on?
Lincoln
And
in
then
New
he and his
Orleans.
cousin they wander into a voodoo priestess's
Hmm.
like whatever, and she does a reading for them, and she goes through the whole thing. And you know what she said to him? She said straight on, according to her cousin, she said, "You're going to be president, and you're going to free the slaves."
Whoa.
Flat out, just said, "You're going to be president of
Wow.
the United States, and you are going to free the slaves."
I wonder if that did not also solidify him in the dark night, in the dark times when he's sitting there and wondering what to do, when
Yeah, because at that
got his
point
head
he's
down
like,
on
I
the desk.
guess he
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I
she
have to
said
push on.
straight into his face, according to his
Yeah.
cousin, "You are going to free the slaves as
Because that
president."
would give you such strength to go, I have to, it's destiny. And Donnie,
Yeah.
I am more convinced now that this whole thing was destiny. It got him to the very end, and not almost, he knew it, and he kept going anyway. So it's
And I know he was going to get I know that he knew he was going to get
yeah,
assassinated the night
yeah,
that he got
yeah.
assassinated.
Oh, I do too. I mean, it was coming at him left and right. That's
He
like
knew
what
it.
I
He
was
knew it
saying to
was coming.
Brian.
He knew it was coming.
Everybody was telling him it. It was so many people. I mean, you dig and dig and dig, and I don't understand how the scholars, and although I respect them greatly, especially Alan um, Guzel, I forget his name, but one of the authors I had on here that was a professor at Gettysburg College and also Princeton. The way they speak, and there's this air, and it's just wonderful, and it's like I don't know how to describe it. It's just wonderful to listen to all this, but they never hit on this dark stuff, and they hide everything. And I think that's like one of the biggest miracles of it all, because I do think there was some kind of predestined thing here. And I'm so glad that, for some of the things that happened, but I hate that he only had 4 days. I wish that he was there to help the South up, and some of the things that he was trying to do to help it to ease the new freedom of an enslaved people for so long and help them up, and all of that didn't happen because one group thought that they knew better, and that's
Yeah.
what starts to happen when one group with power tries to take over and steal what's God-given rights, from people, and the number one of that is
Well,
freedom.
well,
So
history happens the way it happens, not in the way we want it to happen.
that's true.
So that's the
True words,
reality that
man.
you have to accept.
Donnie, this last one going out. If you want to have a cigarette, it's kind of short, but I think it's a
I need a
fitting way
cigarette,
to
and
end
yeah, I'll be
to
back,
end
but I'll be
this for
here.
everybody. don't think I can say any more than that. I love you all. It's worth fighting for. It's worth standing. Remember that, man, when things get rough. Hang in there. I love you guys so much. Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Please like, share, go to the T Public, get you a t-shirt, get you a mug, go to my PayPal. If you guys got that, drop it as we go out. Donnie, fantastic research as always. The man of the
I'm just
hour,
glad
man.
to be of help. Happy to be here, and
Yep.
it's a privilege to,
Yep. Yep. And if times
learn
get a
something
little
new.
rough,
Yeah.
just think back of all the things our ancestors have already gotten through. And yeah, throw that bacon out there. Thank you guys so much. We've really enjoyed this one. And, if you can, show it to your grandkids and tell them a little bit about this. Get them in there and tell them about the ghost stories and tell them a little bit about the men that fought and the ladies who fought and, what they were fighting for. It's, freedom. Look at what we've gone through for it. Hang on to it. I love you all. Donnie, fantastic work as always. And I think we are out of here. I can't believe we did all this in one night. We are like Santa Claus.
I'm just amazed that we did it. We did it in like a timely manner. It's like
Yeah.
11:02.
We had lots of elves, all our wonderful
Man, we were efficient
gatekeepers,
tonight.
all our wonderful gatekeepers. And
Yeah.
remember what he wrote in the ring. Love is eternal. And don't you guys ever forget that, and all these wonderful things that happen in the paranormal and in history. Gotta love it, Donnie. Good night, everybody. Keep your feet under the covers, your closet door shut, because there are things that go bump in the night. Good night, everybody.